Someone make it make sense.
I'll be a couple.
So, by the way, Rochelle posted in the Discord what she was engraving tonight. It's a ring. I couldn't hear this with the audio because I have my mic on and everything, but it looks like it says fuck off. I love that. That is amazing. Dude, that is so cool. I would love an engraved ring if you want to make me one. I'm not like a huge jewelry person, but something like that has like meaning to it, I would freaking love. Not that you have to, just saying. That is very well done. Love it. Congrats on that ring. Let us know who it's for if you feel so inclined. So yeah, so we are here with our Murdaugh surprise. So where we're going to pick up here. So this is day 5. Now what we're going to hear is we're going to hear from just one witness on this day. And the reason is because this is the dude who jailbroke Paul's phone. It's not a long witness, but this is going to give us the context as we get into the next witness, which will be Rogan Gibson and the infamous Snapchat video. And remember, no one had seen that video in terms of the public until that day in trial with Rogan Gibson. That was when we all got to see that video for the first time and hear it for that matter. Okay. The portal's broken on that. Well, I'm glad you made it over nonetheless.
You were going to this one about to give the court in this trial shall be the truth, so you got.
I do.
State your name again for the record. Spell your last name.
Jonathon Van Houten, Vanhouten.
Mr. Van Houten, where are you employed, sir?
United States Secret Service.
All right. And how long have you been employed there?
This April will be 3 years.
All right. And are you currently a law enforcement agent?
I am not.
Okay. And you're a civilian employee of Secret Service?
I am.
All right. But you do have a background in law enforcement, correct?
Yes, I retired after 21 years with the Columbia Police Department as an investigator. For the last 10 years, I was assigned as a digital forensic examiner with the U.S. Secret Service.
Love it.
Okay. And you were a task force officer
Correct.
during that time?
Yes.
And you retired from the Columbia Police Department when?
April 20th, 2020.
Okay. And in this case, you were provided a phone by, I believe, Britt Dove. Is that correct?
Lieutenant Dove, correct.
I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 271. Let's see if you recognize this document, sir.
This is the SLED law enforcement or Stock Law Enforcement Division chain of custody that was submitted to me by Lieutenant Dove.
All right. And do you recognize your signature on that form?
I did sign this one.
What day did you sign that form?
March 21st, 2022.
Okay. All right. At this time, State would move Exhibit 271 to evidence.
No objection, Your Honor. Admitted.
Okay, I'm going to hand you State's Exhibit 272. I'm going to see if you recognize that, sir.
This is an evidence photo that I acquired of the device that was submitted to me.
You took that picture?
I did.
And do we?
Okay, we're going to go past the pictures. So it's the case number and item number, getting that into evidence.
Excuse me, yes, 21st.
Okay. Okay, you unlocked the device. This is the important part, the Secret Service.
At that time, did you have tools available that could potentially unlock that phone?
Yes.
And did SLED have those tools, at least on that day?
At that time, they did not.
Okay. All right. And what tool did you use to attempt to unlock that phone?
For this, for my unlock attempt, I used a tool called Celebrite Premium.
Okay. And Sell by Premium is a way to potentially break into, lock phones, correct?
That is the only use for that tool.
All right. And just generally speaking, how does a Sell by Premium attempt to unlock a locked phone?
It uses its proprietary software in an attempt to brute force the device.
Okay. What does brute force mean?
Brute force is if we don't have the code, we will attack the device, attack the data on the device to try to brute force the passcode to get the code for it to unlock the device.
And a device that's locked, why does it need to be unlocked for you to access the data? What underlying condition exists that prevents you from seeing the data?
Well, for Apple iPhone devices, there are 2 types of locks. There are before first unlock and after first unlock. Before first unlock, is the phone is either powered down, it's been turned off and rebooted, or a code has been entered in too many times incorrectly. If you were to, an analogy for it, if you think of it as a bank vault, the before first unlock, at which we have to brute force the device, is like the big steel door.
Okay. And that underlying data is encrypted, correct? Otherwise.
Yes.
Okay. And you would not be able to read that data, correct?
I have to unlock the device to get to the data to decrypt it.
Okay. And so Subprime Premium, you said, attempted to do a brute force unlock, correct?
Yes,
And ultimately, was that attempt successful?
it was. It was successful because I generated a predefined dictionary to attempt first prior to the tool using its own dictionary.
Okay. And what do you mean by that? What does that mean?
Well, humans are creatures of habit. They like to use numbers that are relevant to them. Most people will use their date of birth, an anniversary, a child's birth, the death of a parent as the access code. So what we do generally is we get as many social engineered codes or dates that are relevant to the particular phone that we will attempt first. Once that attempt is no longer viable, the tool will use its own dictionary to start a hardcore brute force process.
And absent kind of getting lucky with a preceded number, if the Subprime Premium has to brute force its way through and unlock the phone, how long would that take?
So for a 4-digit phone, if you have a 4-digit numeric PIN code, we are limited to an attempt of 146, maybe 145 attempts per day. So a 4-digit code has a maximum possible numeric value of 10,000 attempts. So at 146 attempts a day, it would roughly take a little over 2 months to 68 days to unlock that phone. Adding 2 extra numbers to a 6-digit, going from a 4-digit to a 6-digit, there are approximately 1 million possibilities now.
Crazy,
At 146 attempts per day, it could take upwards 19 years.
19 years.
Now, you said that you can only do 146 attempts a day. Is that correct?
Based on technology at the time and current technology is progressing, so it is getting faster.
Okay. Why is the software limited to just 146 attempts a day?
This is a security protocol chip built into Apple. It limits the time frame that somebody can attempt to brute force a device. The first is an average of 1 attempt every 15 minutes.
All right. But ultimately, you said you seeded several numbers into Subprime Premium to give it some potential guesses first before just start going through all the other numbers, correct?
Yes. Once I start the brute force process, there's an option for me to enter my own dictionary or numbers that are relevant, that I think is relevant to the user of the device. In this case, I entered a number that successfully unlocked the phone rather quickly.
Okay. And what was that number associated with?
I believe the number was associated with the date of birth of Paul Murdaugh.
There it is. The date of birth done, unlocked. There it is. I'm curious. Do you guys use 4 digits or 6 digits on your phone? I only use 4. I can't even imagine like if it was 6 digits, like, because sometimes it's like the face ID is like, if you're not, I don't know. It's like, if so many times you're like, I need to unlock it and you can't get, my face is like obscured or it's like, whatever. It's in a weird position and there's something in the way, whatever it is, or if I like driving. But anyway, I can't even imagine with 6 digits it'd be a disaster. So that's the main point of this, right? So they were able to unlock the phone using his birthday and get into the phone, and then that's pretty much it. So now, with that having been established, we're going to go on to Rogan Gibson's testimony. And remember, Rogan Gibson was Paul's like best friend. He was also like the neighbor. He was basically part of the family. That was his dog who was at the kennel. We're going to get into his testimony. And dude, it's heartbreaking. It's so real and just genuine. And you can see that just the grief, right, that he has, because like not only how like, okay, not only, well, we're going to hear how not only was he so close to Paul, he was so close to Maggie and he was so close to Alex. So it's like the worst possible thing to like, and to struggle with accepting the fact that Alex, who was like his second dad to him, could have done this to his own family. It's a lot. So yeah, Rogan. Here we go.
Spell your last name.
Rogan Gibson, Gibson.
Mr. Gibson, how you doing today?
Good.
Ask the court reporter something. I'm gonna give her a chance to catch up.
Right.
Good.
6 digits, 4 digits.
Mr. Gibson, I want you to introduce yourself to the jury a little bit. Tell us, where you grew up, where you went to high school, just a little bit about yourself before we get to your testimony.
I went to Wade Hampton High School. I'm from Hampton.
Everyone went to Wade Hampton High School. I think it's the only high school there. Shout out to Wade Hampton High School.
All right. And you working now?
I am.
All right. What field do you work in?
The agriculture field.
All right. Why don't you see if you can pull that mic up just a little bit and scoot up just a hair so you're speaking into it. I appreciate it.
Look at Alex there. He's like, yeah, dude, look at him.
You said you're working in agriculture, is that right?
That's correct.
All right. And currently still working in agriculture?
That's correct.
Remember, Alex is probably hoping that maybe on Cross or whatever, Rogan will say something about how Alex was always a great dad. He never saw any violence. Their family was always great, which it was. There was never any history of anything until they were murdered, right? But remember, we are going to get into, between Rogan and the next witness, Will Loving, another one of Paul's friends, the defense opening the door on themselves. Woo!
Back in June of 2021, what were you doing? Working in agriculture?
That's correct.
What kind of job did you have?
I was farming, operating equipment.
Operating equipment. Okay. And let me ask you, did you get to know Paul Murdaugh?
I did.
All right. And tell me, how old were you when you got to know Paul Murdaugh?
I've known him all my life, real good, probably when I was 11, 12 years old.
And how did y'all get to meet one another? How did you become closer?
I lived next to him
Okay. And when did that happen?
when I was 11, 12 years old.
11 to 12? Y'all went to school together?
Paul was a little bit younger than me, and I didn't go to school with him.
Okay. When y'all were growing up, what kind of things y'all like to do together?
We enjoyed the outdoors, hunting, fishing, hanging around the farm.
Were you close friends with Paul until the day he was murdered?
I was.
Tell the jury just a little bit about Paul. Give us a little sense of who he was as a person.
He loved outdoors, hunting, fishing, hanging around. Really enjoyed the farm out there at Moselle.
Fun guy to be around?
He was.
Over the years, as you got to be closer friends with Paul, did you get to be closer friends with the rest of the family?
I was.
And was that just Paul and his brother and his parents, or was it sort of the Murdaughs, the larger family as well?
The whole family.
And over those years, as you became close with them, how close would you say? How close did you become?
Real close, like a second family.
Like a second family to you?
Yes, sir.
Awful.
Paul, did you have a nickname for him, or did he have a nickname?
Rooster.
His brother Buster, did he have a name or a nickname?
Called him Bus.
Bus. What'd you call Maggie?
Interesting. You're not hearing him say Pawpaw.
Miss Maggie.
What did you call Mr. Randolph, Paul's grandfather?
Handsome.
Handsome. How about Miss Libby, his wife, Paul's grandmother?
Him.
Yeah. How about Maggie's parents? Did you have nicknames for them?
I called him Papa T and Grandma.
Papa T and Grandma?
Grandma.
That's correct.
M-A-R at the end?
That's correct.
What'd you call Alec?
Mr. Ellick, or Big Red.
Mr. Alec or Big Red? You said they were like a second family to you.
That's correct.
That's awesome, Rochelle. So, dude, oh, here comes the murder. How come? Why is it with every one of these fucking trials? I feel like there's like they all seem to be located where emergency. So it's like with this one, also with Karen Reed, and there's others. It's like every day, right? There you've got emergencies, and so Rochelle's saying you can do tumblers, dude. I was just thinking like Etsy store, man. Like I love that. Like that is super cool. But people can totally like. There's people that do that stuff and make bank doing it, I believe. But dude, I'm all about tumblers. You could we'll have to chat and see like what the options are, like words, pictures. Like if you could do a squirrel or even like the squanguin. I mean, dude, this could be our first merch, right? As well. Like if you can get a squanguin on a tumbler, yes. So, but that's awesome. I'm a huge collector of the tumblers because, as you guys know, I'm drinking coffee all day, every day.
Being that close to this family, did you frequently go out to Moselle?
All the time.
Did you ever go to? Did they have other properties too that you ever went to?
He did.
What were the other properties they had? And hold up for the sirens, if you will. What were the other properties that they had?
Edisto Beach, we went there a lot.
They had a house at Edisto Beach.
That's correct.
And any other properties while you were growing up that you recall?
The property in Hammond, the house in Hammond.
All right. Did they ultimately sell that property?
They did.
You remember about how long ago that was?
Not real sure.
Oh, that's the house that had a big fucking house fire. I've got thoughts about that. Black Witter is here. I was just talking about you, Black Witter. We were talking about in the previous live stream about court reporters, and we were talking about the different types of court reporters. And I was referencing how I remembered how when you noticed for the first time that they used in this trial that they used the thing that they speak into, and you called it an ice cream cone. Anyway, and I said, shout out to Black Witter. So maybe your ears were ringing, but we love you. Happy you're here.
You would go out. When did they get Moselle? I mean, just roughly.
I believe it was like my freshman year in high school. So 14,
2014, something like that.
no, I graduated in 14, so probably around 2010 maybe.
Okay. And over the years, did you spend a lot of time out there?
I did.
What were some of the things that you would do with Paul out there?
We would hunt, fish, hang around.
Ride around the property?
Yeah, work the food plots,
Ride the
equipment.
property. Big theme in this trial.
I got States 303 right here. This poster board. Can I ask you to come on down with the judge's permission and
Come
let's
on down,
just kind
Rogan.
of point out some things to the jury. All right, you recognize this image? And what is that? Keep your voice up if you could.
That's a picture of the overview of the Moselle property.
Okay. And where's the residence in this picture?
I mean, and there it is.
Right.
Like, literally right there. There's the lady speaking into the thing.
And is there a driveway to that residence?
That would be the main driveway.
Do you see Moselle Road on this particular image? Going right down there. All right. What's this red roof building right there?
That's the old airplane hangar.
Okay.
Right here.
And did y'all have a name for that? You call it the hangar?
Yeah, shed hangar.
The shed or the hangar? Any other structures out there?
Skin and
The
shed.
door shed, the track shed. All kennel.
Okay.
And that's the skinny shed.
Skin and shed? And just real quick, what's the skin and shed
For
for?
this process. Wild game out there. Skin and wild game out there.
Was there a driveway to that part of the property?
There was.
Is that where it went right there?
What's that?
That's where it went right there that you just pointed?
Yeah, the driveway to the shed right there.
Was that driveway commonly used?
It was.
Was there, what's this structure right here?
That's the old cabin, the hunting cabin.
And how about across the street? Was there any structures across the street?
There was.
All right, what was it there across?
Shooting house.
All right, and can you just point roughly where that be? Right at the top of the picture? Okay. All right, and what is this right here?
On.
And when y'all were, what was the shooting house used for?
We were sighting rifles. Shooting kind of that angle.
Sight.
There's a target down here.
He's saying sighting and rifles, and that's actually important. We'll hear more about it.
Did y'all shoot rifles from the shooting house?
We would.
What about shotguns? Would y'all shoot those over at that shooting area?
Yeah, most time we shot them around the pond.
Around the pond? Okay. Is this a line of trees right here?
It is.
And on the other side of that line of trees, what did y'all call that?
The Delphia.
The dove field? Okay. All right, you can go ahead and have a seat for me. Thank you.
We're at Dovfield.
You mentioned that y'all like to ride the property and shoot and hunt out there. Is that right?
That's correct.
What kind of hunting would y'all do out there?
Anything we could hunt.
Okay. Well, give me some examples if you would, please.
Hog hunt, deer, turkeys,
Hog hunting, deer, and turkeys.
dove, quail.
Let me ask you this: turkey season. Do you know when that is in South Carolina?
It's like March, mid-March to early May.
Okay. All right. So it's a fairly short period of time in that time period.
That's correct.
You mentioned hogs first. Tell me about the hog hunting. How would y'all go hog hunting?
A lot of times we'd shoot them at night with a thermal scope.
Okay. And what weapon would y'all use to shoot those hogs with the thermal scope?
300 blackout.
There's 300. Blackwood, are you referencing the tree that was cantilevering over? That's hilarious. I bet that's what you're referencing.
And whose weapon was that?
I think it was Buster's.
Well, tell me about what you know about the blackouts. How the family got those blackouts.
They bought two of them, one for Paul and one for Buster.
Okay. And can you describe those two? Did you see both of them back in the day?
They were similar build. One was black, one was like a green tannish color.
And did anything ever happen to one of them?
Yes, one of them was stolen.
Okay. And were you present when that happened or around when that happened?
I wasn't present. I was just told about it.
All right. And what was the story you were told about that?
I was told somebody took it out of Paul's truck at a party.
At a party. Okay. How long ago was that?
I'm not exactly sure.
I mean, years?
Yes, it's been 5-6 years probably.
Okay. And let me show you something real quick. I'm going to show you what's already been entered into evidence in States 163. And we'll have you look at that image and particularly what's there on that pool table. Do you recognize that?
That's a picture of a 300 blackout.
All right. And is that the one that you and Paul would take hog hunting?
Yes, that's one of them.
You said one got stolen. To your knowledge, was there ever a replacement gun?
I don't remember a replacement.
You don't remember replacement. You remember Paul using the black one, is that right?
That's correct. Or either the green and tan one before it was sold.
Before it was stolen,
That's correct.
5 or 6 years ago.
Correct.
What other guns did Paul use a lot that he favored?
He favored a Super Black Eagle shotgun, 12 gauge.
All right. Let me show you another image if I could. I'm going to show you what's already been made into evidence in stage 3 and see if you recognize that.
Okay, showing me pictures of the gun.
All right. Would he carry that shotgun a lot as well?
Yes, I have seen him carry that shotgun.
Hi, Kane. Welcome back. You wanted the other one. Oh, what? Yeah, two guns. Remember, 2 guns were used. 2 guns were used. No, they didn't. And I have thoughts about where I think they might be. Blackwater probably knows. But no, they never recovered the weapons, nor did they recover the clothes he was wearing. So, or the money. That's the other big thing. All the money.
We'll show you what's been frequently entered into evidence in stage 4. And we do me a favor. You see that box of gloves right there? We just put them on the floor behind you and just kind of out of the way. I'm going to have you look in here and see if you recognize that.
That's Super Black Eagle 3 of Paul's.
That's Paul's favorite shotgun.
That's correct.
Get it out again. I wonder if they're going to take it back out.
Did he have a weapon he liked hunting deer with?
He did. It was a 7mm weight.
Okay. Did Paul ever have any pistols to your knowledge or carry around any pistols?
He did sometimes. Yeah.
Sometimes. What were his favorite 2 guns? Or the most guns he most commonly had around?
Probably that 300 and the Super Black Eagle. That's the ones I've seen him use the most.
The Super Black Eagle is the Benelli shotgun.
Tell me about a little bit about the hog hunting. You said y'all would hunt them at night?
That's correct.
All right. And tell me how that works. What would y'all do? Y'all walking around? Y'all riding around? How does that go?
Most time we drove 4-wheeler vehicle. We didn't hardly ever walk, but that scope, the thermal scope would pick up the heat.
Okay. And where on the property would y'all hunt?
All over.
The hogs you hunt all over?
That's correct.
When you and Paul were together hunting with that blackout, did you usually have the gun and shooting, or did Paul usually have the gun and shooting?
It just depends.
Well, who had the gun more?
Probably Paul.
One guy's driving, the other guy's looking?
That's correct.
Is that something y'all did frequently?
A good bit. Yes, sir.
If y'all ever killed a hog, what would y'all do with it?
Sometimes we would give it to people that wanted to butcher it. Sometimes we just let nature take its course, just leave it wherever it was shot at. It just depends. Sometimes we skin them out ourselves.
Or hogs a nuisance animal?
They are.
We hear a lot about that in this case. The hogs are a big
We're
nuisance.
talking a little bit about Paul and who he was. How was Paul with his cell phone?
He was on his cell phone a lot.
Let me ask you a little bit about Miss Maggie. You mentioned before that the family had a couple of properties. In the summertime, where did Miss Maggie prefer to stay?
She liked to stay at Edisto
And did you know why she preferred Edisto?
because of the yellow flies at Moselle.
The yellow flies.
That's correct.
Makes sense to me.
What about Paul and Alec? Where would they stay most of the time?
Well, Paul, if he was back home, he'd stay at Moselle. But a lot of times he was in Columbia or Charleston.
Did he have an apartment in Charleston?
Not to my knowledge in Charleston. No.
I'm sorry, in Columbia.
In Columbia, yes.
Okay, thank you. Back in June 7th of 2021, you were working in agriculture,
That's correct.
working in farming,
That's correct.
hard work.
Yes, sir.
What time do you have to get up in the morning and go to work?
Normally get up about 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock. Where were you staying at that point in time?
I was staying at my girlfriend's house in Beaufort.
In Beaufort. You don't have to say her last name. What was her first name?
Mary Ann.
Mary Ann. Okay. And why were you staying at Beaufort at that period, at that point in time? Was that where your house was or not?
No, my house was not there. I was working on St. Helena. It made it a closer ride for me to go to work.
All right, so you're staying with your girlfriend because of that?
That's correct.
Did you have a dog at that time?
I did.
And what kind of dog?
Chocolate lab.
Chocolate lab. Still have the chocolate lab?
I do.
What's the dog's name?
Cash.
Okay. How old was Cash about that time?
I'm guessing he was a puppy, 4 or 6 months old, maybe.
He was a cutie pie.
Were you able to keep Cash with you when you were staying at your girlfriend's in Beaufort?
I was not able to
Why was that?
because she wasn't allowed. She was renting a house. We couldn't keep one there.
What arrangements did you make for Cash when you were staying in Beaufort and you couldn't keep him at your girlfriend's house?
I would leave him at the kennels at Moselle.
And tell me how that came to be. How'd you work that out?
I asked Mr. Elliott if I could leave him there. I'd be going at a week at a time. Just leave him there for a week, pick him back up when I come back home on the weekend.
All right. Did you leave food for him, that sort of thing?
I did,
So where was he staying when he was at Moselle during the week when you were working?
in the kennel.
In the kennel? Describe the kennels a little bit for the jury. What was the structure like?
It was like a lean-to shed with about somewhere around 8 kennels under it, feed room on the end.
Cash was staying in one of those.
That's correct.
You'd go get him on the weekend.
Friday night or either Saturday. Yes.
Where would you take him then?
Back to my house
And just where were you living at that time?
in Colleton County.
In Calhoun. You get up at 5 a.m. and get to work. About what time do you get to work, working farming?
I'd roughly get to work somewhere around 7:30.
7:30. And then what time would you get off?
It all depended.
What time
I
typically would
mean,
you get off?
5, 6, 7 o'clock.
Just depending on how much work need to get done.
That's correct.
Were you pretty tired when you got home?
I was.
During the course of that day, June 7th, 2021, did you have any communications with Paul?
I did.
What's the first one you remember?
Sometime around lunchtime.
All right. What did y'all communicate? Did y'all talk on the phone? Did y'all text or what?
Yeah, I think he called me and told me about the sunflowers had been sprayed in the dough field and they were dead.
Okay. What did he say about that?
Yep.
Said that he was getting ready to replant them.
No, I know.
They've been sprayed with some Roundup or something?
That's correct.
Did y'all talk about anything else that you remember?
Not that I remember.
Trees. Or rather the dove field. Yeah, it's awful. Awful. Cash and Bubba.
Well, I'm thinking about it. Asked you about Paul and use of a cell
Maggie,
phone. You know where he
I'm
kept his cell
here.
phone when it wasn't in his hand?
Most of the time in his pockets.
Was he typically one to respond pretty quick to you? You guys were talking about something?
Normally, yeah, we were talking about something. He would respond pretty quick.
That evening, did you talk to Paul again after that initial conversation?
I did.
All right. And when was that, roughly?
Around 8:40.
Okay. And what was that conversation about?
He called and asked if something was wrong with the dog's tail.
Okay. And was that the first you were hearing about that?
That's correct.
Tell me about your conversation.
I told him that, I wasn't real sure. I just dropped him off there Sunday and told him let's try to see if he can get me a picture or FaceTime me and let me see what was going on with the dog's tail.
All right. Where was Paul when he called you?
He was at the dog kennels.
And how do you know that?
I could hear the dogs barking in the original call.
Is he describing to you what he's seeing on Cash's tail?
That's correct.
Oh my God, here we go.
And Cash was at the kennels?
He was.
Did you hear any other voices when you were on the phone with Paul about 8:40?
I did.
And what voices did you hear?
I heard Miss Maggie,
And who else did you hear?
and I thought it was Mr. Elliott that I heard.
You thought it was Mr. Elliott.
And you have a great day too. Making the donuts. Do you actually make donuts? But hope you have a wonderful day as well.
You talked to Paul, and what did y'all talk about? What was he going to do?
He was going to try to FaceTime me. He said, you know how the service is out here. He said, if I can't get a FaceTime to go through, I'll send you a video
And why was he going to FaceTime you? What's the difference between FaceTime and a regular call?
so I could see what was wrong with the dog.
And y'all talked about how the service is out here?
That's correct.
And what did you mean by that?
Most of the time, you got enough service to make a call. I mean, sometimes the calls will break up, but a FaceTime, couldn't really get a whole lot of service to make the FaceTime call. It's kind of lagging.
Y'all had problems with that before?
That's correct.
Did y'all discuss what to do if the FaceTime didn't work?
We did.
And what was the discussion?
He was going to send me a video of it, of the dog.
He was going to video it and then do what with it? Text it to you?
That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the last time you ever talked to your friend?
That was.
Oh God, guys,
Did y'all try to FaceTime?
We did.
this is him just trying to hold it the fuck together.
Did it work?
It came through, but it was kind of lagging. I couldn't tell what was going on.
And then never heard from him again.
That's correct.
Did you ever get that video?
I did not.
After you never got the video, did you try to reach back out to Paul to see if you could get him to respond?
I did. I called him a few times and texted him.
Did he ever respond?
He did.
Yeah, this
Did
is.
you reach out to anyone else trying to get Paul to respond?
Oh,
Texted Miss Maggie.
Did she respond?
this is
She did.
awful. Oh God.
About what time do you think you went to bed that night?
I'm not exactly sure. It was sometime right after I probably tried to contact him.
And you never heard from Miss Maggie either.
I did.
Did you ever talk to her at all that day?
I did.
About what time do you think you went to bed?
I'm going to say somewhere around 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock. You're pretty sound sleeper?
That's correct.
Been working on the farm all day?
That's correct.
That's correct. Did some calls come in that you didn't realize because you were asleep?
Yes, I woke up with some missed calls
What time did you wake up the next morning?
sometime around 5:30.
When did you find out that your friend Paul and his mother Maggie had been murdered?
That same time, 5:30.
How'd you find out?
I called one of my friends that had left me, or I had a missed call from, and he told me what had happened.
And tell me his first name, please.
Nolan.
What'd you do after that?
We got a little boy up and got him to school without talking about it a whole lot, and then we headed back home.
And by home, you mean Colleton County?
Colleton County, that's correct.
And where'd you go from there?
I went to my house first, then I ended up going to Moselle
About what time you think you got there?
sometime maybe 8:30, 9 o'clock.
What'd you see when you got there? Where'd you go on the property?
I went to the dog kennels.
And who'd you see there? Did you talk to anyone there?
I did, and I seen John Marvin, but I didn't speak to him.
Did you talk to anybody at the scene when you first went there?
The only person I seen was John Marvin.
What'd you do after that?
My cousin let the dog out the kennel.
That be in cash?
That's correct.
Did you take cash with you?
I did.
And where'd y'all go from there?
To the convenience store down the road from the house.
And who'd you meet there?
I met a game warden.
And what'd you do after that? Did you have a conversation?
I did. I had a conversation with him, and he said that law enforcement was going to be wanting to speak with me. And I told him, I said, well, if you got a contact, let's get him up here and let's talk.
And so did you wait for law enforcement to arrive?
I did.
Do you remember who you talked to?
I did.
And who'd you talk to?
Jeff Croft and Katie McAllister.
And did they do an interview of you?
They did.
Did they ask you about your communications with Paul the night before?
They did.
And did they ask you to see your cell phone?
They did.
Did they take screenshots of your cell phone?
That's correct.
Were you showing them your communications the night before with Paul and Maggie and others the night before?
Yes, sir.
Were you holding up the phone and they were taking screenshots?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to show you what's been marked for identification. 165, 166, 167, 168, 169, 170, 171, and 172. And just flip those real quick and see if you recognize those images.
Scoot through while he identifies those exhibits.
Stand by for one second. 168, 169. Mr. Gibson, I'm going to put these up on the screen. You got a screen up there. And so take a look at that, okay?
Okay.
All right, 165. Can y'all turn the screen around for me, please? That's a screenshot that Jeff Croft took of your phone that on June 8th, 2021, the next day.
That's correct.
All right, and that reflects a call from who?
Paul.
And which Paul is that?
Paul Murdaugh.
All right, and what time is that call?
8:40 p.m.
And how long does it last?
4 minutes.
Is that the call you just described to this jury?
It is.
The call y'all were talking about Cash the dog and trying to figure out the tale?
It is.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as 166. Now, again, you told this jury that when y'all got off the call, he was going to try to FaceTime you, and if not, send a video.
That's correct.
All right, I'll show you 166. Is that another screenshot of it?
It is.
And that's the FaceTime call, is that right?
That's correct.
8:44 p.m.
That's correct.
for 11 seconds.
That's correct.
That FaceTime didn't work though, did it?
Yeah, it came through, but it was lagging. We couldn't communicate through it.
So y'all stopped.
That's correct.
And you were expecting what after that?
A video.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as states 167. Are these texts that were on your phone?
They are.
And who are those texts between? Who are you trying to text right there down those last two bubbles?
I was sending those texts to Paul.
All right. It's got a little glare on it. Well, what time is that text right there?
8:49 p.m.
And that's on June 7th, 2021?
That's correct.
And what are you telling Paul right there? Can you read that to the jury and then explain what you were trying to say? Paul, please.
See if you can get a good picture of it. Mary Ann wants to send it to a girl we know that's a vet. Tell him to sit and stay, and he shouldn't move around too much.
Who were you talking about when you said tell him to sit and stay?
Cash the dog.
Did you send another text right here?
I did.
What time is that? Can you read it?
9:58 p.m.
What do you say?
Yo,
And when you say yo to Paul, what are you trying to get him to do?
just trying to get him to call me back or text me back.
Did you You haven't gotten that video.
That's correct.
I'll show you what's been marked as 168 states. Is that another screenshot of your phone?
That is.
These are missed calls from June 7th, 2021.
That's correct.
Or these are outgoing calls?
They are.
Who are you trying to call?
Paul Murdaugh.
Tell me the times you tried to call and start from the bottom, please.
9:10 p.m., 9:29 p.m., 9:42 p.m., 9:57 p.m.
Did you ever respond?
No, sir.
I'll show you what's been marked as states 169. Is that another screenshot of your phone?
It is.
Who are you trying to call right there?
Paul.
What's that last call?
10:08 p.m.
Did he answer that call?
He did not.
Show you what's been marked as states 170. Is that another screenshot of your phone?
It is.
And who are you trying to text right here?
Miss Maggie.
What time did you try to text her?
9:34 p.m.
And what did you text her?
Tell Paul to call me.
Tell Paul to call me.
Yes, sir.
Did she ever respond?
She did not.
You said you woke up the next morning on June 8th, 2021, and you saw you had some missed calls. Is that right?
That's correct.
And we'll show you what's been marked as states 171. Was this also a screenshot or a picture that Special Agent Croft took of your phone?
It is.
All right. And who are those missed calls from?
Mr. Ellick.
And what time did they come in?
Because we already
10:20
know calls.
p.m.
Callister, who you thought that you heard Mr. Alec on that phone call at 8:40.
That's correct.
Okay, that's the important part. Heard
As
so remember,
time went on.
so the phone call happened before the Snapchat video because Rogan didn't get the Snapchat video. So he heard Alex's voice when he was on the phone with Paul, right, in the background. And that was all they had to go on until they got the Snapchat video because Paul didn't get enough service to be able to send it.
On after the murders, did you go to Moselle where all the family and friends were gathering?
I did.
Were you there for a amount?
Probably the whole part of that later that week.
While you were there at the house where the family and friends had gathered, did anyone ever ask you about your last contact with Paul?
There was
And who asked you?
Grandma.
And that being Miss Brandstetter,
That's correct.
Maggie's mother? And
That's correct.
what did you say?
Told her, yeah, that I talked to Paul about the dog and told her that I heard Miss Maggie in the background and I heard a male voice that I thought was Mr. Ellick.
Was he in the room then?
Yes,
Did he stand up and say, no, I wasn't there?
he did.
Did you ever have any conversation with Alex Murdaugh about what happened that night?
No, sir.
Did he ever ask you about whether or not you heard him on that phone that night?
No, sir.
Did he ever tell you what he did that night?
No, sir.
Did you ever ask him what he did that night?
No, sir.
Not a subject you wanted to talk about, was it?
That's correct.
Over time, as the months passed following the murder of Paul and Maggie, you were ultimately interviewed by law enforcement and other part of the process and that sort of thing. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And as time went on and you were asked about who you heard on the phone that night, that call at 8:40, you said, hey, I thought it was Alec, but I can't be sure.
That's correct.
Told law enforcement the night of, 99% sure, correct?
Say that question again, please.
Told law enforcement the next day, June 8th, that you were 99% sure. Is that correct?
That's correct.
As time went on, you said, I thought it was Alec, but I can't be sure.
That's correct.
In November of 2022, did law enforcement ask you to come in and look at a video?
They did.
And did you watch that video?
I did.
And what was on that video?
It was the video. Paul was supposed to take a cash. Cash was on the video.
There it is.
And did you recognize the voices on there?
I did.
Did you recognize the voices of your second family?
I did.
And what voices did you hear?
Paul's, Miss Maggie, Mr. Ellick.
And how sure are you now?
Positive.
100%?
That's correct.
One second for the computer to boot up. When you received that phone call from Paul at the Kennels at 8:40 p.m. on the night of June 7th, 2021, did Paul sound normal to you?
He did.
Did he sound stressed to you?
He did not.
We're gonna play
Did
it.
it sound like someone was there that he didn't know?
No, sir.
Did he sound worried?
He did.
Did you hear Maggie's voice?
I did.
Did she sound stressed?
She did.
Did she sound worried?
No,
Did she sound normal?
she did.
Did she sound like there was somebody there she didn't know?
No, sir.
Or that she was in danger?
No, sir.
Did you hear Alex's voice?
What I thought was his voice at the time, yeah.
When Maggie or Paul would go down to the kennels, how would they usually get there?
They would drive. Sometimes Miss Maggie would walk or ride bike. If they had an ATV or a golf cart in the yard, sometimes they would drive that.
Paul more likely to be one to ride or one to drive down there?
Most of the time, he would drive.
Was it usual for the family to go down there sometimes and let the dogs out?
It was.
Let them run around?
That's correct.
Did Miss Maggie like to do that?
She did.
Was it common, to your knowledge, for guns to be left down at the kennels?
Sometimes there was, yeah.
I'm gonna play that video for you, okay?
Okay.
Here we go.
Get back. Quick, Cash.
Hey, he's got verses now.
Hey, Bo.
It's a guinea.
There's a chicken. Come here, Cash. Cash. Quick.
That video you watched back in November 2022?
It is
Where's that video taken?
at the kennels.
You recognize your dog?
I do.
You recognize Paul's voice?
Yes, sir.
You recognize Maggie's voice?
Yes, sir.
You recognize Alex's voice?
Yes, sir.
100%.
Yes, sir.
Can you point out Alex Murdaugh, the person whose voice you recognize in this video in this courtroom, please?
Sitting right there in the gray jacket.
Please let the record reflect he's identified the defendant. Thank you, Mr. Gibson. Nothing further.
There it fucking is. Now we're gonna watch Cross because guess what, guys? Doors be opening. Doors be opening.
Good afternoon, Rogan.
How you doing?
We've met many times, haven't we?
Yes, sir.
Tell the jury more about Paul, please. What did y'all like to do together?
We loved hunting, fishing, just hanging around. We loved staying at the beach, going to the sandbars. He could get along with just about anybody.
See, one of your best friends?
He is.
Is this a hard day for you?
Yes, sir.
Did you live one summer in the cabin there on the property?
Yes, me, Buster, and Nolan lived in the cabin, and Paul was there a lot.
Right. And when you got a house of your own, I mean, it was just right down the road, wasn't it?
Yes, sir.
Down Moselle Road?
Yes, sir.
It was your grandparents' house or you moved into?
That's correct.
And but before that, Ms. Maggie and Big Red over here, Mr. Alec, I mean, they treated you as family, didn't they?
That's correct. They did.
And Paul was like a brother to you.
Yes, sir.
And Ms. Maggie was like a second mom to you,
Yes, sir.
and Mr. Alec was like a second dad.
Yes, sir, he was.
And could you tell the jury what you observed Alec's relationship was, starting with you? What was his relationship with you?
We had a good relationship. I mean, he treated me like one of his own. We had fun. He gave me permission to hunt the property.
Did you have permission to come and go and down to the shop?
I did.
Did you have permission to use any of the equipment?
Yes, sir.
And did you help out on the farm for game management and stuff?
I did.
Okay. And can you tell the jury a little bit about Mr. Alec's relationship with his son Paul?
Very good relationship. Very good.
Were they close?
They were. Nothing happened without Paul telling Mr. Alec about it.
And did juries heard
That
some
would include threats.
Alec
What-
interviewed on the tape various about how the Moselle property was Paul's passion.
It was.
You agree with that?
Yes, sir.
Why do you think it was his passion? What was he so passionate about out there?
He just loved hunting and using the equipment to manage for wild game, fishing.
Right.
He loved all of that.
Was Paul a good friend?
Yes, sir.
Was he a loyal friend?
He was.
Was he a loyal son?
Yes, sir.
Tell me about Miss Maggie.
She was like a second mother to me. Always took care of me. Treated me like one of hers.
Did you spend time down at Edisto?
I did.
And you and Paul and Miss Maggie, sometimes just the three of you down there?
It was.
Okay. What did Miss Maggie like to do?
She liked the beach.
When they were down at Edisto, were you the only friend welcome at the Edisto house, or what was it like?
There was many friends that were welcome to the house.
Like adult friends, or was
Most
Miss Maggie, Mr. Alex home? Was it open to all of Paul and Buster's friends?
It was open to all of Paul and Buster's friends.
And was that the case at Edisto?
That's correct.
Was that the case at Moselle?
It was.
Did it appear to you that Mr. Alec enjoyed being around his family?
Yes, sir. He did.
And did you enjoy being around Mr. Alec and Ms. Maggie?
Yes, sir.
You remember, and I apologize, I'm gonna get the date wrong, but do you remember in early 2019 that Paul was in a boating accident?
Yes, sir.
Oh, fuck. Well, there you go.
Beautiful young
guys.
woman died in that accident, didn't
There
they?
you go. Door.
Her name was Mallory Beach.
That's correct.
And Paul was eventually charged. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Did Paul receive any threats or harassments that you knew about as a result of that boating accident?
None that I thought was real serious. I mean, he mentioned it that, he'd get people comment about it, but nothing that I thought was real serious.
Did he would people just mouth off to him when he went out in bars or just with his friends?
Yes, sir. He had mentioned that.
But was it anything that you thought was serious in nature?
No, and a lot of times I wasn't there when that happened. So I didn't think it was that serious.
Let me back up. I skipped over something. You played sports when you were a kid growing up?
Yes, sir.
I think your dad was a coach, was he?
Yes, sir.
And was Mr. Alec a coach to Paul and Buster?
He was.
And did Mr. Alec, when he wasn't coaching, would he and Ms. Maggie come to all the sporting events for the kids?
They were always there.
Can you think of them ever missing a sporting event for Buster or Paul?
Not that I can remember.
And they come to your sporting events?
Yes.
Now, and Paul had an apartment in 2021. He was starting to go back to school at Carolina. You remember that? He was in college.
Yes, sir.
School year.
That's correct.
And in June, he had moved back home. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Was he living at Moselle for the most part?
I think he was staying in Moselle some, but kind of all over the place.
And sometimes he stayed with his Uncle John Marvin down at Bluffton?
Yes, sir.
And he was working with his Uncle John Marvin, wasn't he?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, when he was on the farm, when he was at Moselle, now this gets a little confusing for me. Frankly, let me just ask you, can you tell the jury about all the farm trucks there at Moselle?
Yeah, there was a lot of different vehicles that could be used anywhere from ATVs to tractors.
Well, let's just talk about the trucks. So what was Paul's primary truck?
Around the farm most of the time, F-250.
All right, but what was his primary mode of transportation? Was it a truck?
It was F-150.
And was it white?
It was.
Okay, and did he drive that around the farm some?
Sometimes, yes.
And then there was a big F-250,
That's correct.
and that was also white, wasn't it?
That's correct.
Did that have a name, the big F-250 farm truck?
Yeah, White Boy. That was the older F-250.
And then there was another one called Dolly.
That's correct. That was a newer F-250.
That was a newer F-250. And then was there a black truck?
There was.
And that was F-150?
It was.
And was that Buster's old truck?
It was.
So there were so Buster had another vehicle, and his old F-150 stayed at Moselle, correct?
That's correct.
And then Paul had his white 150 pickup, and where he was not at Moselle, there's still 3 other trucks at Moselle, right?
That's correct.
Dolly, White Boy, and then Buster's old black pickup.
That's correct.
And when Paul was there, he would drive any one of those trucks, wouldn't he?
Yes, sir.
On the farm.
So this matters because one of the big questions is like, how did everybody get to the kennels, right? So we broke this down in our previous coverage with our What the Truck series, got a whole emoji or command rather for it and everything, What the Truck. But it really matters. And yeah.
And no matter which one,
especially because you also have to involve, right? There were also the 4-wheelers and the ATVs. They had a lot of vehicles on that property.
he was driving, he would most often have some sort of firearm in the truck, right?
That's correct. Most of the time on the farm, he had a firearm in the vehicle.
And those trucks, they would either stay down at the shed, the workshop, or at the house. I mean, there was no set place for them, correct?
That's correct.
That's part of the reason why it also matters too, because we know that they would keep guns in the trucks, right? So if you are the defense going with this two-person shooter theory with the 5-foot ninja assassin children, the idea being that they found, like, they want to go with the trucks. Somebody drove the truck to the kennels, right? And there happened to be guns in the truck, and then these people showed up empty-handed and got lucky because they found guns in the trucks. And that's how the family guns were used by other people. That's kind of what they're going with. But regardless, it also is important because it goes to the whole thing with the traveling of the to and from the house, and then the kennels, and then and the deal with the guns being, were they planned ahead of time? Did Alex bring them with? The whole story about they were out there hog hunting, so they would already have guns with them, but yeah.
And they didn't lock the trucks up, did they?
Not normally.
I mean, and then Paul would leave guns in the trucks, wouldn't he?
That's correct.
There we go. Just literally what I was just saying, right? To try to suggest that somebody could have just showed up with the plan to murder and then didn't bring any weapons and then got lucky because they found guns in the trucks. It's great.
Paul would leave guns everywhere.
Thank you for that reminder.
Just about, wouldn't he?
Yeah, he could leave. He left a lot of stuff different places.
Yeah. Did he ever leave any guns at your house?
I'm sure he has over the years.
Okay. And then he would leave guns in the workshop, right?
I have seen guns in the workshop, yes.
And then did they keep the workshop locked?
It just depends. Not a whole lot, but I have remembered it being locked. Yes.
Was it more often not locked than locked?
Probably more recent. Yeah, it wasn't locked.
Did they, if someone were bent on mischief, would it be a hard thing to go up on that property
On
and
mischief.
steal stuff?
Probably not around the sheds. It wouldn't be too hard.
And if someone were bent on mischief, would it be a hard thing to go open up and rifle through or look through White Boy or Dolly or Buster's old black pickup truck?
That is possible. Yes.
And there were no security cameras down at the old airplane hangar, the workshop, the kennels, and the pole barn and skinny shed, were there?
Not that I was ever aware of.
Okay. And there were no, in the cabin where you guys stayed that summer, there was no security cameras there either, right?
Not that I knew of.
And was that cabin, did it stay locked?
Sometimes it was locked, sometimes it wasn't.
Paul left guns there too, didn't he?
I have seen guns in that cabin before, yes.
I want to, I'm not turn this thing upside down, but you talked about handsome. Who's handsome?
Mr. Randolph Murdaugh.
And Ms. Libby is
Yeah.
who? Who's Ms. Libby?
M.
M. And that's Paul and Buster's grandparents, right?
That's correct.
And you know where they live?
In Alameda.
Alameda. And just generally, where's Alameda?
It's on the outside of Barnville.
Okay, is it like a crossroads?
And it's a veer off. Go toward Ridgeland. If you veer off, if you stay on that road, you go to Embassy.
Right. If you're coming out of Hampton towards Varnville, then where the veer off is, that's called Alameda.
That's correct.
Now, to get to Alameda, and the most direct route, do this right, okay. So, can you see from back there?
I can.
And so this is the main house right here, correct?
That's correct.
And you can get down to Moselle Road by going one or two ways, right? You can either take a left and go down by the shop and the kennels, or you can go straight out the main.
One thing I will note, so this house does not have an address, for real. This is what we're talking about in this area. It's just people just know the house, Alameda, okay? So we found the house. I mean, I found the house, but like through, getting on the maps there, Google Maps. But the way that I found the location of that house was basically through the description and the testimony of how you would get there when you drive there, and then also based on the pictures of the house. So like there's pictures of the house that come in at trial, like the front porch and da-da-da. And so literally I had to just get on like the street view and go around until I found the house, like as if someone was lost, right? Imagine if you're lost and you're like looking for this random house without any real way of where to go, and you just look around until you find it based on the context. Like that's how I found it. That's how I found the house, the actual house, because there's no address. So
Main driveway, is that right?
Yes, you can go out both ways.
But when you hit Moselle Road, would you turn right or left if you're going the most direct route to Alameda?
Turn right.
And be going down this way?
That's correct.
are we done with this part about the roads? They really, okay.
What?
He was on it a lot. Yes, sir.
Yeah. And
They didn't. They had a PO
and
box.
did the battery get down
Yep, they
low?
had a PO box.
pretty regularly?
Yes, he would let his phone die sometime or he would lose it.
Well, and when it would get down low, did he have a habit of not using it to try to keep him going all the way out?
Yes, I have seen that happen before.
And have you done that yourself?
Yes, sir.
And phone coverage, cell phone coverage.
He talks, I'm blanking. You're in Louisiana, right? Trying to remember. I always try to make sure I remember where everybody's from. And I love it. We've had a lot of new squirrel friends become part of the school crew recently, which I love. And I'm just trying to make sure that I keep everybody's location straight. I feel like it's Louisiana or somewhere else in Ohio, but let me know. Yeah, so Illinois. Okay, Illinois. That was gonna be my next guess, but not Chicago, correct? Okay. So glad you mentioned that about the dogs. That's where the collars come in. So it actually doesn't surprise me because this is just out in the middle of fucking nowhere and it's just swamp property. But I do understand in terms of the dogs. But the dogs had tracking collars. Now, this is how I believe Bubba was left out when he went to Alameda to try to make his fake alibi happen, manufacture his alibi. Bubba was still out. And the reason he was able to leave Bubba out was because they had those GPS collars. We did a whole deep dive on the collars. This is all stuff that never got solved in the trial. And when we covered, because this is my favorite case, right? And so when we covered this gavel to gavel, like I couldn't let anything go unanswered, even if it wasn't actually didn't need to be solved to prove the murder, right? Because I'm just like, I want to solve this case. And because there was a lot of stuff that was like, like another example, Maggie's cell phone. How did Maggie's cell phone get there? We did all of it. But yeah, so it doesn't surprise me about the cameras. I think that there's testimony that they might have had some like cameras out in the middle of, well, okay, they had some cameras out in the middle of nowhere on the property, which was like to monitor the deer and shit, but not for security for the house. They left everything unlocked. They left all their cars unlocked, their trucks rather, the house. This doesn't surprise me for the South and in this type of area. It doesn't surprise me. And they did not live a rich lifestyle. That's the other thing. That's why it's so crazy, right? Because he was stealing all this money. They were not living, honestly, even if he didn't steal the money, if you just looked at his salary and how much he was making as an attorney, they were living well within their means, as in, you know, they didn't have, you know, some people, they'll take all their money and they're buying fancy cars or they're blowing it on this or that. They didn't live like that. Same with all the other partners of the firm. They all live very down to earth lifestyles where they spend their time on the land, hunting and fishing and farming. You know, even Ron Ball, one of the partners of the firm, you know, he, again, attorney, right? Makes a lot of, you know, when he testifies, he talks about like he gets a phone call or something happens while he's literally on a tractor for plowing his own. I mean, you could hire somebody, right? So it's a very different type of culture where like the money, they're not living these lavish lifestyles, right? And the property out there is dirt cheap. That's the other thing. So for them to have the house like Moselle and then a beach house, that's not lavish. I mean, when I was growing up, like we only ever had the one house, you know, but a lot of my friends, they had a house and then they had at least one other, like one or two or more vacation homes. Like that was normal. And like, so anyway, I'm just saying like, just for them to have Moselle and then a beach house is really not even that crazy, especially because again, the property was would be so cheap. And we know that when he got the house at Moselle, there was some sort of deal involved because somebody owed him for something. There was a whole thing with that, right? So he got Moselle, I think maybe it was like for free or there was some sort of thing with the transaction there because somebody, right? Because they had invested in real estate and lost all this money. And like for part of like making up for their share, one of the dude who owned that property, I'm blanking on his name now, gave him Moselle, I'm pretty sure. Handed the title over. So yeah, anyway. You know, they had all these old trucks or whatever, but it's not like they're buying like Lamborghinis and whatever the fuck, you know, which is interesting. Okay, so Kentucky is 30 minutes from you. Is Illinois near Kentucky? Hold on. As you guys know, my world geography is way better than my U.S. geography. Is that for real? Wow, that's crazy. Can't relate to Chicago. Meg is here. Hi, Meg. So yeah, security cameras doesn't surprise me because again, they, you know, they didn't even bother to lock anything. I mean, it was just there's no crime. The only crime is committed by this dude who's sitting right here with the gray jacket and the red hair, right? Crime being the stealing, the crime being the murder. Literally, he is the crime bandit in this area. So,
On that property is somewhat, when I say that property, I'm talking about Moselle, somewhat spotty, isn't it?
It is.
And is there better coverage up at the house than down at the kennels?
I wouldn't think so.
Okay.
I mean, it's kind of hit and miss.
And you can be down at the kennels and you can be, walk 10 yards one way, you'd have some coverage, 10 yards the other way, you wouldn't have coverage.
You know, coverage was spotty. The kennels, take a vehicle, driving, we know about that.
You remember?
Turkey season. duck hunting. I think the main part with that they opened the door with already happened. That was with the boat case, which is wild. Okay. Can't believe he asked that question.
Now, waterfowl shells load are different than turkey load, right?
That's correct.
What's the difference?
Steel shot
And steel shot for what?
for ducks, waterfowl.
And why? Is it just preferred or is it required?
That's required.
Because you don't want lead in the water?
That's correct.
Great.
But
How we
for
established.
hunting purposes,
Meg, this is my 5th live stream today, so that's a record. I don't think I've ever done more than 3 live streams a day. This is my 5th one. We just kept going. We started out at least tonight, this series. We started out with BK, right? And then we went into Lori Vallow, and now we're here with Murdaugh. So we're happy to see you, and we're glad you're here.
if you just had your choice, would you rather hunt with lead or steel?
Lead shot.
Because it has greater knockdown power?
It does.
Okay. Is that why you would rather, or just price too, I suspect?
What's that again?
Why would you prefer lead over steel?
It has better knockdown. It's better.
Okay. Now, you were asked questions about 300 blackouts, and at one time, Paul had his own, and Buster had his own. They had 300 blackouts. You remember that?
I did.
And then you heard that Paul had one stolen out of his truck at a party.
That's correct.
And do you remember roughly when that was?
I'm not exactly sure.
Years ago?
Yeah, it's been many years ago.
Understandable.
And whenever in recent memory, have you ever seen Paul with a 300 blackout other than the black one with the thermal scope?
Not to my knowledge.
So whenever you were with Paul and he had a 300 blackout, it was the black one with the thermal scope.
That's correct.
Did you ever see a 300 blackout around the house that was black without a thermal scope?
Not to my knowledge, I haven't.
And I know the jury's heard it. What's a thermal scope?
Picks up the heat from the animal. You can see it at nighttime because of the heat.
Just for night hunting?
That's correct.
And that's the best time to hunt hogs?
It is.
But during the daytime, they stay in the swamp.
That's correct.
At night, they come out.
Yes, sir.
And y'all had cameras out there to see when they were coming out?
Sometimes we did.
Now, you listened to this videotape and heard that was your dog, Cash,
It was.
Chocolate Lab,
Yes, sir.
and you heard Miss Maggie,
Yes, sir.
and you heard Paul, obviously.
That's correct.
And Miss Maggie was saying he got I forgot him,
A guinea.
guinea. And then you heard a voice say, no, it's a chicken. You remember whose voice that was?
That was Mr. Alex that said it the first time, and then Paul also said it was a chicken.
Okay. And then someone says, Bubba, let go of that chicken or something like that.
Yeah, just hollered for Bubba.
And whose voice did you recognize hollering for Bubba?
Mr. Alex,
And who's Bubba?
their dog.
Did they have, and was Bubba a yellow lab?
He was.
Did Bubba have his own kennel?
He did.
Which one was it?
Most of the time he was in the first one right beside the feed room.
Bubba was not in the kennel.
Now-
Bubba was running around.
You had talked to Paul. I think the records show you had a 4-minute telephone conversation before that video was taken, which you didn't receive until law enforcement showed you. But you remember you talked to Paul for about 4 minutes, right?
That's correct.
And I believe when you were interviewed, you said it sounded like Mr. Halleck had pulled up or something to that effect, driven up. Do you remember that?
No, I don't ever remember hearing a vehicle.
Okay.
I just remember hearing a third voice.
Okay. And the next day, excuse me, was it the 8th? The next day you went over and went into the house at Moselle and you saw Maggie's parents?
That's correct.
And that's when Grandma, Miss Brandstetter, asked you if you heard Maggie's voice?
Yes.
Okay. And you told her you did.
Told her I talked to Paul and heard Miss Maggie.
And you told him and front of everybody that you,
No, I was just thinking about something. I was just thinking about from earlier, we were talking about those motions in Limine, and we were talking about the strategy there with the defense baiting the state. Like, I was just thinking about this, and I think here's what it is. Because the whole thing about the IgG tip, right? And I've been commenting on it, and now it's just even more clear with the state's response, and we went through that earlier. But here's what I think it is. Because remember, the whole thing of like how the defense, we knew they wanted the IG to come in. We know the state wanted it out, right? And then we see the defense filing a motion to eliminate to keep it out, and the state filing a motion to eliminate, they want it in, but only that they can say the tip, just the tip, right? And it's like, what the fuck? Here's what I think it is. I think that the defense knows, rightfully so, that again, without the state being able to mention IgG, they're really screwed because they don't have anything, and they don't have any way to show the jury how they got to the defendant, right? Like literally, it's just, it won't make any sense. That the jury might not go, they might vote not guilty, right? And the thing is that the state seemed to think that they were going to be okay without it coming in, but clearly they've changed their tune, because now the defense is like, we want to keep IG out, and the state is like, no, we want just the tip. So now, in other words, the state is now saying they want to bring in just the tip. So the defense motion to eliminate was to exclude it, right? The state motion to eliminate was to include it, but only a small amount, right? So they must have realized that they are going to need to be able to get into just the tip part, right? Which is interesting because that is a change from before. And the thing is that it's kind of a win-win, I think, for the defense. I think that for the defense, the strategy is that if, let's say that their motion to keep it out is granted, right? And let's say that the state, that theirs is denied and they can't bring it in or whatever, or and so in other words, there is never, so imagine the first scenario where the trial happens and there's no mention of IgG, doesn't even come up, right? I think that the defense is thinking that maybe the result could be an acquittal because of the fact that how are they proving anything connected to him, right? Okay, that's scenario A. Scenario B, the state does bring up the tip, and then that can open the door for the defense to then, I think that in the defense's hope, obliterate them with all the problems, right? And the potential issues there. So essentially, it's like a game of chicken for the state that they're doing, I think, because they're essentially, think about this, right? What they're doing is they're putting the state in the position where they're going to have to either basically not mention it at all, right? And then the jury is going to be like, what the fuck? Or they're going to mention it. Now that's going to be, that explains why the whole just the tip thing, right? That explains it, because that's the state trying to say, we don't want this to all come in. We don't want this to all come in, right? But we need it. So it's like, if you're the state, it's like you might have to sort of eat, regardless of whatever the judge decides, right? Because the door can be opened by anybody at any time. So it's like you still would have to make that decision. Do we not risk it? Do we just not mention it and risk it? Or do we risk bringing it up as just the tip, and now we've opened the door and now we're getting into this whole thing? So I just wanted to follow up on that because I was thinking about letting that marinate a little bit more as to why, like I was thinking to myself, why would this be a better strategy than the defense just saying we were bringing it in, right? It seemed like they were going to bring it in. And so it's like, why is that? I was thinking like, why are they, what's the strategy here? How does it benefit them to try to keep it out and then have the state bring it in by opening the door on themselves? And I think that explains it, because they're thinking best case scenario is actually it doesn't come in and they can't bring it up at all. And then there's no way to connect it to him. Right. So maybe, that's just what I was thinking about. Oh, are you saying Bob's not been reading the documents? That's crazy. What? How is that happening? I feel like, how is that possible? Exactly. And that's exactly that tightrope, right? P Fox is saying, wouldn't they have to explain what kind of tip? That's the tightrope. That's how the doors get opened, right? Because it's like they're gonna have to explain how they got, you know what I mean? Like the jury's not gonna buy it if it's like the trial starts, okay, here's the DNA on the knife sheath. Like they're like, well, what happened in between, right? Like out of everybody on the planet, you know what I mean? Like you're gonna have to give them something of how the person sitting there is, you know. And so that's exactly what it is, right? It's like, oh, it's a tip. All it'll take is a 1 or 2 questions, and then that'll be it. The door will be open. So that's why I'm saying the state's gonna have to probably make a decision. Do we just not even go there? Do we not even say there's a tip? You know, you see what I mean? This is where the strategy comes in, but this is what I think the defense is doing. Bob has read them, but he's just starting to read and get into Idaho. He's not read all of them. Okay. Okay. Definitely too many, just the tips. Definitely.
You had, thought you'd heard Alex's voice too, right?
That's correct.
And he didn't push back whatsoever?
No, sir.
What was Alex, demeanor, when you first saw him after the murders and days after? What,
He was just real distraught, sad. Just tore up about it.
did he cry a lot?
Yes, sir.
Did he hug you?
He did.
Did he cry?
Yes, sir.
Did you cry?
Yes, sir.
I mean, did he cry the day after and the day after? I mean,
That was really sad.
I'm second. On this video, you've been around Alec, Maggie, and Paul most all your life. But was there any? Did you notice any signs of distress or anxiety or anything out of the ordinary?
I did not.
And you've been around Maggie and Alec and their whole family a lot.
Almost all of my life. Yes, sir.
And would you see Alec openly show
Here we go. Door opening number 2.
his display of affection and love to Maggie?
Here we
Yes, sir.
go.
And from your observation, they have a close, good relationship,
Door.
That's correct.
and they were loving to each other and to Paul and Buster and their friends, correct?
That's correct.
And can you think of any circumstance that you can envision, knowing them as you do, where Alec would brutally murder Paul and Maggie?
Hey,
Not that I can think of.
that's
Thank you.
motive. Lack of
That's all the question I have.
door.
Anything further?
It is a big courtroom.
You were asking questions about the sheds being unlocked. Paul ever complained to you? People were up there stealing all kinds of stuff all the time?
I was never aware of people stealing anything.
Um,
Oh, I know. He's so uncomfortable. What day are you guys talking about? I don't think I know. I must have not been there for that live stream.
When you talked to Paul and heard Maggie and Alec at 8:40, was there any problem with that voice call, or did it come through just fine? The reception was good.
The call came through, yes.
And the last conversation you had with Paul was he was going to do what if the FaceTime didn't work?
Send me a video.
There
He
you go.
never did.
That's correct.
Beautiful.
You've heard that video and you hear 3 voices, is that correct? Maggie, Paul, and Mr. Alec?
In the video, yes, sir.
Okay. So we're going to skip on to Will Loving. Next witness. I think there's even more door opening here.
Your family testimony about to give a court in this trial shall be the truth so help you God.
Certainly, God.
State your name again for the record.
Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip to cross because that's where the door is open. So on direct, they talk a lot about the driveways and the sighting in of the weapons. I'll just summarize. It's really important in terms of establishing again how many guns there were, which gun disappeared when, and establishing that the 300 blackout that is missing that was used in the homicide is indeed the one that was still around. because there were several. So let me just see where this is at. If that's cross. Okay, so let me back up a little bit.
You talked a little bit about places. Have you had the
I thought it was cross. We'll watch the kennel video here with him.
Get down. Quick, Cash.
Hey, he's got burgers now.
Hey, Bubba.
It's a kitty.
There's a chicken.
Get it off.
Come here, Cash.
Get it off.
Cash. Quick.
Whose voices did you recognize on that video?
Paul Murdaugh, Maggie Murdaugh, and Alex Murdaugh.
And how sure are you?
100%.
Person whose voice you recognize on there that you identified as Alex Murdaugh, do you see him in the courtroom here today?
Yes, sir.
Can you point him out for the jury?
He's sitting right there.
There he is.
Please let the record reflect he's identified the defendant.
I will say, I have to say, normally I don't like the whole pointing people out. There's only probably a handful of exceptions. One exception would be with this dude right here. Point him the fuck out. And honestly, for this court, and by court, I mean this jurisdiction, this culture, and the way it's done in South Carolina, it makes total fucking sense, right? But I will say, I would be totally fine if when Wendy Adelson finally has her trial, I'd be totally fine if someone pointed at her also. Those might be the only examples I can say where I would be fine with it.
It does. Mr. Levin, please answer any questions the defense may
Okay,
have.
on to cross.
Good afternoon, Will.
How you doing?
Good. It's a hard day, isn't it?
A little bit.
These poor kids.
You mentioned about a Snapchat video that you received on sometime the evening of June the 7th. Do you remember what time that was?
I don't. It was later in the afternoon,
That's
somewhere around like
Campbell
7 o'clock-ish in that area.
And what was it of?
It was Alex and his son Paul. They were riding around looking at trees that they had built and, laughing, having a good time.
Everything. So he posted it on, I don't have Snapchat. Maybe most people here have Snapchat, but tell us a little bit about what that is.
Snapchat's an app on a smartphone that you can send pictures and videos to your friends. You can save pictures and videos, but it's just an app that most young people use.
And it's a way to share.
I love it. He was not expecting to have to define Snapchat for the gallery, the other attorneys, and the world, right? Not what you're expecting. That's kind of putting him on the spot. I love it, though.
Videos.
Correct. Yes, sir.
My kids have it, but are the videos supposed to disappear after some period of time?
Yeah, they have a limit on them. You can either send it it'll play over and over and over again until somebody clicks off of it, or you can go up to like from 1 to 10 seconds. But you can also save a Snapchat if you want to look at later.
And is it like Facebook? You have friends that want to, be on your circle of Snapchat? Is that how
Yes,
that
sir.
works? And did Paul have a lot of Snapchat? They call friends on Snapchat?
Yes, sir, he did.
And would he frequently post things on Snapchat?
Yes, sir.
So I've never used Snapchat, but when he asked that question, I thought of my response just to be funny. He was like, when he was like, do you call them friends? I was like, snappies. Like, how many snappies do you have? Just me being silly.
Did he frequently post things, events like he did on the evening of June the 7th when he and his father were out, messing around with a tree?
Yes, sir, he would.
And we post stuff with his family events.
Yes, sir, he would.
Okay. And the Snapchat, when he would post it, would it go to everybody who's in his, I guess, group?
Yeah, you have to send it to certain people. He wouldn't necessarily put stuff. They have what's called a story that everybody that you're friends with can see. He wouldn't necessarily always put stuff on his story, but he would send stuff to whoever he wanted to.
I think we're going to learn more about Snapchat, but let me ask you, when Paul would post on Snapchat, could people see where he was posting from? Did he have his location services activated?
I don't think he kept his
Well,
location on.
no.
Sometimes they have filters
Not for the app, but we know he had his location services on. That is abundantly clear.
and stuff that show you different areas where you are. But I don't think he kept his Snapchat location on.
Well, when he posted the video of he and his dad at Moselle, could you tell that he was at Moselle?
Yes, I could tell he was at Moselle just from being there, but maybe somebody who doesn't know the property wouldn't know.
Okay. All right. You were asked
Who are you talking about? Who's she?
questions about the last.
Who is she and what day is this? What are you guys talking about?
Well, you were with Paul and, well, getting ahead of myself. I'm sorry. So you and Paul were good friends, and Paul was friends with your friend group out of Columbia. Is that right?
Yes, sir, that's right.
And then y'all would sort of migrate to Charleston, and some of the Columbia folks went to Charleston, and y'all would visit down there.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And I guess originally you all met at Edisto with family homes and vacationing, and right.
Yeah, that's where everybody met until everybody went to college and everybody just kind of meets up.
And sometimes Paul would come to Columbia and stay with you.
Correct.
And you had another friend, Wills Chapman, that he would stay with Wills.
Correct.
Okay. And I mean, Paul left a 300 blackout at your house for some period of time, didn't he?
Yes, sir, he did.
How long did Paul leave a 300 blackout at your home?
Probably a month or so at least.
Okay. And I think when Wills Chapman moved to Charleston, what did he find in his closet?
He found Paul's deer hunting rifle.
That Paul had left there?
Yes, sir.
And Paul had thought he had lost his deer hunting rifle.
Correct.
And lo and behold, it was at Wills Chapman's house, right?
Yes, sir.
I mean, was that unusual for Paul to leave stuff everywhere?
No, not at all.
And so he was,
He left things.
would he leave guns around the farm?
Yeah, he would every now and again.
We'd leave them, say, in the golf cart.
Yes, sir.
We leave them in unlocked trucks.
Yes, sir.
And you were asked about the kennels, but what about in the workshop, the shed? We leave guns down there.
That's where I was, referring to. You'd see him down there sometimes, but I don't think there was ever guns permanently down there. No, sir.
Okay. And when he left the 300 blackout in Columbia, what was?
That's how everybody answers this question. They ask everybody this, right? Were there always guns down there? I mean, every single person down to the housekeepers. I mean, how many witnesses between all the friends? So many people came to that property. They maybe asked 20 witnesses the same question about, were there always guns down there? And everyone answered it the same way, which is there weren't just always guns down there, right? They would only be down there if you were using them. That's, again, like I was just referencing earlier, why the whole thing matters about what was their intention riding the property? Were they actually out there to hunt hogs? And that's why we get into the rebuttal case with the hours that hogs are out and all this, right? Get into the weeds with the hogs, or the swamp rather. But basically, because the whole thing is in other words, the testimony is yeah, there could be, but they didn't just keep guns over there. So the whole point is well, were the guns there because they were actually using the guns to hunt hogs? And are these the guns you would use to hunt the hogs? And it's the right time of day to hunt the hogs, right? Or did Alex bring them with premeditation style? And that's my thought, right? Because again, we broke this down. The answer to the guns for me came when we broke down the truck. So anyway.
Was it the one that
Okay.
Mr. Waters showed you, the black one with the thermal scope?
I only caught the first couple minutes of that when they were just showing that video, and then I had to go teach. So interesting. I'm curious if anyone wants to summarize what she had to say about Kohberger. I'm curious about that.
Yes, sir, it was.
And you learned at some point in time that he got a replacement for one he had previously lost?
Yes, I did. I didn't even know that it was a replacement. Like I said, I didn't know about the original one. I just remember seeing the brown one.
And that brown one did not have a scope, right?
No, sir, it didn't.
I'm going to go ahead a little bit and get to the part where I know they get to the more talking about the character and the opening of the door. They bought the scope. So remember, because a lot of the importance of this witness was the sighting in of the gun, right? But we are not going to spend time on that now. Receipt for the purchase. Okay, fine. The scope. Okay, this is the sighting in of the gun. Right. Oh, okay.
Me, myself, and 3 or 4 other buddies, along with Alex, Maggie.
Oh, this is when they really step in. Now I'm remembering. Oh, fuck. This is when they get into the birthday party video. Oh, this was epic as fuck. This is the defense just kicking, bulldozing, smashing all the doors. This is wild.
And I believe that was it.
And did you spend a lot of time with Paul around his dad and mom?
Yes, sir, I did.
And how would you describe Paul's relationship with his father?
It was an awesome relationship.
And what do you mean by awesome?
It just kind of seemed like Paul was the apple of his eye.
And
Poor
from your
Buck.
observation, you tell the jury what you observed of Alex's relationship with Maggie.
I thought they had an awesome relationship as well from everything that I could see. You know, they were always laughing and everybody got along. You know,
That's true.
nothing was out of the ordinary at all.
Did Maggie and Alec open their home up to Paul and Buster's friends?
Yes, they did.
How many people stayed at the Idaho Beach House that Memorial Day weekend?
I'm not 100% positive, at least
Memorial Day
3 or 4
weekend.
friends.
And where'd y'all stay?
All in the bedrooms. I think somebody might have been on the couch on the porch outside.
The
Maybe the
porch-
couch inside as well.
Okay.
I slept on the couch on the porch outside. I can't even relate to live. Like what?
And was Buster there?
I believe Buster was there, but I'm not 100% sure.
And did he have any of his friends there?
Yet again, I'm not sure.
You mentioned that when you got a phone call from Paul's cousin, I believe, after midnight on June 7th, or early morning, June 8th, you learned what happened, and your immediate reaction was to hightail it out of there?
Yes, sir.
And were you fearful for your safety?
At first I wasn't, and then I was calling back other friends, and people started telling me to get out of there. So then I started second guessing myself, and then I got out of there.
And when you left, I mean, did you even lock it up when you left?
I honestly couldn't tell you.
I'm going to show you what I marked as Exhibit 61, and it's a disc. And
Okay. The video. Oh my God. This is the birthday party video. This is crazy. Oh my God.
celebration for Alec.
It was a birthday celebration for Alex.
You know, I would like to.
Oh my God.
Exhibit.
Okay, we're gonna get to where they play it, and I'm gonna put it on normal speed. This was when they really, 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 really stepped in it. Oh my God. Okay. Remember Chris Wilson's in this video? Dude. What is Alex even? They're not nothing's happening. What is, dude?
Without the sun? Yeah. You've seen the video
Yes, sir.
of people singing happy birthday to Alec?
Yes, sir. They are.
Okay.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear. Happy birthday to you. Thank y'all so much. Thank you, baby.
Oh my God, I'm blanking on his name right now. Oh my God. So can you guys see my mouse? Right behind Alex's head, there's the dude with the white hair. I'm blanking on his name. I'll think of it when I'm not trying to think of it. He's the attorney for Jersey, as well as tons of other people involved with this whole case. And he was in trial every day, along with, he wasn't the only one. So many of these attorneys, they must have just taken 6 weeks off of work and just so they could come to this trial, which is insane.
On the Wednesday after Paul and Maggie were murdered, you went to Moselle, correct?
Yes, sir. I did.
With some friends of yours?
Yes, sir.
I mean, the friends of Paul's?
Bill McCulloch, that's his name.
Yes, sir.
How many?
I think 3 of us went.
And how many other people were there, friends of Paul's?
There was a lot of friends of Paul's there.
More than 10?
On Wednesday, I don't know. I don't think so. I think a lot of people were kind of trying to feel out the situation. So just like the closer friends went, but there was probably 10 or so of his friends there when I was there.
And what was Alex Murdaugh's demeanor on the Wednesday?
He was grieving, crying a lot. I think we all were.
I think you described that he just couldn't talk. You remember that happened?
Yeah, it was pretty hard to talk when, he came and grabbed me and 2 other guys, and we just
Here we go.
kind of had a big hug, and It was pretty tough for him to make words.
Was he crying?
Yes, sir.
Were you crying?
Yes, sir.
Everybody there crying?
Yes, sir.
All right. That's all the questions I have now.
Before you do that, go back to your video if you would, please. Can y'all turn that screen around for me, please? Still at the very end, please. Of that video.
Thank you, baby.
Who's that guy in the green shirt? Do you know?
Go.
That's Chris Wilson.
Do you know Chris Wilson's relationship to Alex Wilson or Alex Murdaugh?
Yeah, I think they're best friends.
Best friends.
Oh God. Here we go. Buckle up.
Best friends should do each other right. Isn't that
Oh
correct?
God.
Yes, sir.
Oh my God.
You were asked about.
He's asking these questions because he knows that there's a lot of things that were off limits initially in this trial, and the defense opens these doors. So right now, the things that are in question here that have been opened are boat case, because Jim Griffin got into it with Rogan on Cross, and then even maybe more importantly than all the financial crimes, right? Because by asking about, Alex didn't have any motive, right? And like his character. And then by playing that birthday video, the thing is Creighton saw an opportunity here. Now, I don't know if the defense didn't even think of this, but the fact that Chris Wilson was in that video, all Creighton had to do was identify Chris Wilson. So he's asking these questions, knowing what's going to be coming up and that this is going to be coming in. And so this is like, the jury's going to hear this and maybe not know the full context of it, but he's so sure that they're going to get the answers because this is coming in because the defense opened the doors.
When you found out about the murders
Mm-hmm.
and you talked to some people and then you kind of hightailed it out of your place, right?
So he's leaving that hanging. He's like, best friends should do each other right. Yep. And he's going to leave that hanging, right? Because he can't get into yet what the nature of their, right. But that question right there, that's how you know.
Yes, sir.
Because you were scared or at least thinking about the possibility of some sort of harm. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Because it was a shock for everyone, wasn't it?
Yes, sir.
It stopped everything in its tracks, didn't it?
Yes, sir.
And everybody was worried about this family and what was going on and what had happened. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Anything else people were worried about went out the window. They were all focused on Alec at that moment, were they not, in themselves? Is that correct?
I think they were focused on everybody that had anything to do with it.
Anything that had anything to do with this family. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
You were shown the Snapchat video. You were also asked about another Snapchat video that you saw the day of the murders.
Yes, sir.
And what was on that video?
It was a video of Alex and his son riding around looking at trees that had fallen over on the tractor or on the golf cart.
Was it a short clip?
Yes, sir, it was.
I'm going to play that tree video to the best of your recollection.
Okay.
It was later in the afternoon.
Small face.
Is that the video you saw?
Yes, it is.
That was on the afternoon or the evening of June 7th, 2021.
That's correct.
Clothes that he was wearing, at least in that video you saw on the evening of June 7th, 2021.
Yeah, those are the clothes I saw in the video.
Long pants and a shirt.
Yep. Yes, sir.
And those particular shoes.
Yes, sir.
They never recovered those clothing items.
And you watched that video in real time when it came in from Paul's phone that evening. Is that correct?
That is correct.
You were asked about the relationship that you observed between Alec and Paul and Alec and Maggie. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Mm-hmm.
To your eye, it was a very good relationship. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. It was a good relationship in my point of view.
Did you know anything about Alec's finances?
Sorry.
No, I did not.
Oh my
Did you
God.
know anything about his law practice?
Oh my
No, I
God.
did not.
Did you
The
know?
reason this is so incredible is because they've not had any sidebars, right? There's not been any discussion with the judge of what can I get into. This is just, and remember, this could be a big problem if it wasn't found that the defense had opened the door. These are motions in limine, right? They could be risking a dismissal of the charges. Creighton is just so not like, he's not even worried about it. This has got to be a really exhilarating moment for him. Like, he's just really calm. I mean, he's always pacing, right? That's Creighton. I love it. I'd be the same way. Like, when I'm thinking, I walk around in circles. But like, I Meg, I know how you feel about Creighton. I adore Creighton.
Anything about where he gets his?
In other words, he's so casual when this is such a huge moment. Like, that's the thing. He's so casual and so cool. This is such a huge fucking moment in this trial. And it's amazing. I would be jumping up and down.
Did you know anything about where he gets his money?
No, I did not.
Did you know anything about where he was spending his money?
No, I did not.
Did you know anything about what his bank account balances were?
No, sir, I did not.
Did you know anything about the debt that he was carrying? Do you know anything about that?
No, sir.
Did you know the specific things that were going on in the boat case the week that Paul and Maggie were murdered?
No, sir.
Do you know anything about civil discovery?
Oh my God.
And how it can expose financial information?
Oh my God.
No, sir.
Oh my
Do you
God.
know anything at all about him being confronted on June 7th, 2021
And here it comes. Here it comes. Look at that. They're standing up.
about
Object.
There it is.
Did you know anything about him being confronted?
Judge Newman says I didn't hear the question. I mean, Jim Griffin didn't state any grounds.
On the morning of June 7th, 2021, about $792,000
Oh my God.
of missing fees from his law firm.
Objection, Your Honor.
Holy fuck.
Totally improper.
Oh my God.
Objection is overruled. Did you know anything about that?
And there it is. At that point, it's like, you done fucked it up. You done asked for it. Overruled.
No, I did not.
You know any of the facts of those things that I just asked you about?
No, sir.
Nothing further.
All righty.
Anything further? No. Step down.
So I think they might discuss this for a second before it ends, because this is huge. This is huge. This is fucking huge.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's it for today.
Okay, so we're gonna go on to day 7, where now they're gonna be dealing with the fallout of that whole thing. Okay, so Judge Newman's gonna make look at how cute this is. Colleton County. Look at this. Damn it. I wish I could have gone to this trial. He's going to make a, look at this. Look at that dude all dressed up. He's going to make a very thorough record. All right. Oh my God.
Good morning. First, I want to address the
door
ruling yesterday.
lack thereof. A ruling. Okay. So they did. So they did have a chat. Let me just back up. So they did have a little bit of a chat off, but we didn't see it. So he went ahead and ruled. Okay. No, sorry. Because he overruled the objection. This is the ruling he's referencing. Because the fact that he overruled that objection right there is like, now we know. So that was the ruling, even though it was just overruled, like that was the ruling that he's referencing. And now he's making a very thorough record. Why this witness? It's a timing thing because they want to get into this. And it was because, okay, so, well, Judge Newman will kind of talk about it, but the thing is this, they couldn't ask questions, like the state couldn't ask questions about Alex's character if it wasn't brought up from the defense, right? Because that's the rules. So the defense asked questions about Alex's character to both Rogan, Gibson, and Will Loving, and that he's a great father and he right? And all that. And so that is part of why, in other words, there's other witnesses who say that, but these are the first witnesses who had that opportunity because this is still early on in the trial. The previous witnesses have all been law enforcement, right? So in other words, Rogan Gibson was the first witness in this trial that actually knew Alex personally, and then Will Loving was the second. So had they testified earlier in the trial, I bet the defense would have done the same thing. But the point is, like, the defense used it as their first opportunity with people who knew Alex personally to try to get in some of this other character evidence, but they also brought up the boat case, right? And so this was the state's first opportunity then on on redirect or whatever, because they couldn't get into that unless it was brought up on cross, right? But he's going to make a thorough record, and I'm sure I'll pause it and think of things to add in here as well. So hopefully that helps.
Overruling the objection by the defense to the state's questioning of the witness on redirect as to whether he was aware of certain things that had occurred earlier on June 7th involving Mr. Murdaugh or Duck. In the questioning cross-examination of the witness.
Look at the difference in the courtroom, though. Look at this. Here's the thing. I want to look at Look at this. Y'all saw just the day before. Think about this. Rogan Gibson, right? One of the most crucial witnesses, and there was plenty of space in the gallery. What happened was word got out overnight that these doors were opened, and now everybody's there. Isn't that crazy? Like, look at the difference. It's jam-packed. It's not been jam-packed until now. This is the day that it all changed.
Mr. Griffin, the witness, was asked whether he could think of any reason, the gist of it, if he could think of any reason possible why Mr. Murdaugh would commit the crimes he's accused of committing. That, in effect, turned the cross-examination of that witness from dealing with the specific issues in the case to having that witness testify as a character witness for Mr. Murdaugh. Among his other areas of inquiry was his being a loving father, a great provider, financially secure, things of that nature, all indicating an opinion by that witness as to the good character of the defendant, either through direct statements or circumstantially through the evidence that was adduced from that witness.
I see your question. Right. Good question, P. Fox. I guess it's why these kids know about their finances. You know what I mean? 100%. Here's why. Not that they would know, and Creighton doesn't expect that. Here was the point. I can totally explain that. So what the thing is what they do know is they know about Paul with the boat crash and the civil, the fact that there was issues with that, right? But beyond that, of course not. That's not the point. Remember, sometimes attorneys ask the questions just so the jury hears the questions. Because it was clear he was going to say no over and over again. No, I don't know that. No, I don't, right? That's not why Creighton wasn't asking the questions for the answer, right? He's asking the questions so the jury can hear the question. That's why. And I
And
appreciate
the
your
court's
question.
view, that opened the door for the state to respond by asking questions, as the state did. Hence, the court overruled the objection. In addition to all of that, the objection was totally inappropriate. As
Yep.
the court laid out and reviewed with the
Was not a
parties
legal objection.
early in the trial,
Yep.
that objection should be made and the legal basis stated.
Objections.
An objection of totally inappropriate is,
Yep.
in the words of Judge Joe Anderson, in effect, no objection at all. That's not a legal basis
Get
for
it,
an
Judge
objection.
Newman. Get it. Get it. Yes, sir.
That summarizes the basis for the
Yeah.
court's ruling on that issue.
Isn't that wild? That, I mean, this is we've talked a lot about this. Like, actually came up with Karen Reed recently, right? The whole thing about the objections. Remember how we were talking about, like I was saying, how one of the reasons why it's so important is because sometimes you'll have people object and they don't have an actual objection, right? Or they have the wrong objection. Elaine is a great example from Duffy Heard, right? And in this case, he said objection, and at first said nothing, as we just pointed out. And then he said objection. He objected again, and he said totally improper. That's not a legal objection. So that's one thing. But also sometimes you'll see it in trials where they say objection, and then they say, and they ask, what are you objecting? And then they don't have an answer. So then they just flounder, or they say something and it's not the right objection. Maybe there was an actual correct objection, but they didn't have it in mind. And that's part of the reason why I think it's important to state objections, because otherwise it's unfair, right? Because a party could just object without actually having a legal objection in mind. And part of it is you should know why you're objecting, right? It's almost like putting you on the spot, like calling your bluff. I mean, that's not the reason why, but that's how one way you could kind of look at it, that, you know, for let's just say that Breenan objects and she continues on, Judge Bev, with the second trial the same way as before, where they don't state their grant. Like he may not actually know what the actual objection is, or there may not be, you know what I mean? So, and this is a great example, because right here, he's saying, and the other thing is this, had he made an actual legal objection, it could have been completely different, right? Had he said objection, I mean, let's see, what would have been maybe a correct one? I guess really it's it would be maybe addressing emotional limine. So maybe objection can be approached, right? Or objection. Outside the scope of this witness's expertise, or outside the scope of this witness's knowledge, right? Outside the scope, something like that. Objection, foundation. Or even you could object to like the form of the question, right? The fact that he was asking those, or objection relevance, or objection, let's see, maybe also cumulative, because he kept asking those similar questions over and over again. There were in other words, the point being, there are legal objections that could have applied, but he didn't even state a legal objection. He just said totally improper. Had he stated a valid legal objection, this entire thing could be completely different. It's very interesting.
Answer those questions yesterday. And that character type evidence was not only sought by from Mr. Gibson, but also, was it Loving? But also Mr. Loving. And none of that really implicated Rule 404, 404B. One, it opened the door. Number two, it's 404A type reputation questioning that the state had a right to respond to per the rules. And thirdly, it addressed an issue raised in the case by the defense. The defense in the case has primarily been the defendant has such a great character that he could not possibly have committed these offenses.
Yep.
That's been a general thread from opening statement throughout. In addition, the defense introduced through that witness, which was also introduced through other testimony in the case by the defendant, that the boating case was a reason for the murders to have occurred. And by the defense inquiring of the witness yesterday as to his knowledge and belief concerning, or his knowledge concerning the boating case, that likewise opened the door for the state to address that issue.
And the other thing is it's all tangled up with itself, with all the other things. Because right, when you think about the boating case, well, the boating case caused a lot of financial issues. Now he had financial crimes Like it's all interwoven. That's what's so wild, right? He had all these financial crimes going on prior, but also there was financial crimes, around the boat case, right? In the hiding of assets, and the boat case and the finances with that being, according to the state's theory, part of the gathering storm.
And that's the basis for the court's ruling as to opening the door, introducing the voting case, and reputation type evidence that the state had a right to respond.
Now, if you missed the full lunar eclipse, look in the Discord. Rochelle posted some pictures, and you can see it was a blood worm moon / dog, blood worm dog moon.
The Rule 403, yet to be addressed by the court, is Rule 404 issues. And those
Prior bad act.
issues will, to some degree, have to be addressed in camera. And I'm wondering if the state has other witnesses to testify as to other things, since we have the jury here ready to go, prior to addressing any other.
Well, first of all, we do have a Snapchat custodian who has flown in that we need to get in so that person can make a flight. Based on how things ended yesterday, I was prepared this morning. We're planning on going forward with some of the witnesses from the law firm, and that's going to, there's certainly stuff beyond 404, but that's also going to put some of the 404 issues squarely into play. So that's kind of where we were planning to go this morning, Your Honor, with the testimony that we have. I can certainly get some more forensic people rolling. I apologize if I sort of misread what we needed to be ready to do, but that's kind of what we focused on last night and are ready to address this morning.
Yeah, well, the court didn't have a lot of time to do jury planning issues, and it might have, jurors typically come at 9:30. It might have been a better idea with greater thought to have had them come later. But I don't know how long these issues will take to be addressed.
I think it takes about a week. I think they have a couple witnesses in front of the jury here and there, but overall, my recollection is it was like a solid week.
I think,
or maybe it just felt like
the two
that.
law firm witnesses out of the gate. I think once the court has we could do some very focused in-camera testimony, and I think that for those witnesses, the court can then rule on what's admissible and what's not. And once that's done, then we can get underway with the jury for those witnesses and proceed accordingly. And then of course we can certainly have a discussion as far as other witnesses, and then perhaps arrange time to do any other in camera. But I think setting the table with these two witnesses is going to set the table for many of the issues that whether they're in or out, the court has to decide.
All right. Well, first, as it relates to Rule 404, and Rule 404B states that evidence of other crimes or wrongs is not admissible to prove the character of a person in order to show action in conformity therewith. In other words, not admissible to show propensity to commit the crime or a crime, but it may be admitted for certain other reasons, including motive, identity, intent, and perhaps the existence of a common scheme or plan. Additionally, well, I'll address it later regarding res gestae, but my view of the evidence is that evidence of the other alleged crimes can be introduced in this case to show motive, intent, common scheme, and plan, given the proper analysis as it relates to that evidence being offered. As I indicated earlier, that the court agrees with the view, and as expressed by the court in U.S. v. Siegel, 536 Federal 3rd 306, wherein the court addressed the issue of previous alleged crimes involving multiple victims, and that the state should be able to pursue its theory of proving that why suddenly, or why some such the motive for such a tragic occurrence to have taken place on the dates alleged here. And under the federal rule, it goes on to say that evidence of other crimes or bad acts is necessary if it is an essential part of the crimes on trial, or where it furnishes part of the context of the crime. This state has not adopted that portion of Rule 404B, but the courts have addressed that issue in some of the cases, particularly one that stands out to me as one of my cases, State v. Frankie Lee McGee from Richland County, in which the res gestae was used as a basis for the courts properly allowing certain evidence including evidence of commission of an earlier crime. The test being whether it logically relates to the crime with which the defendant is charged. Court states in that opinion in the res gestae that one of the accepted basis for the admissibility of the evidence of other crimes arises when such evidence furnishes part of the context of the crime or is necessary to the full presentation of the case, or is so intimately connected with and explanatory of the crime charged against the defendant and is so much a part of the setting of the case and its environment that its proof is appropriate in order to.
Michelle asks a very good question. We're about to get right on into it. Wasn't he due to turn over his financials the next day for the, yeah, literally we got like one more minute of him finishing up this, putting this on the record. And then we get into the trial within a trial. And next up is Jeanne Seckinger. And I think it's like her. And then I think it might be Chris Wilson and then Mark Tinsley. It is, yes, we're going to hear all about it.
Complete the story of the crime on trial by proving its immediate context or the res gestae or the uncharged offense.
And the thing is we have to remember, by turning over those financials, it would uncover all the shit he'd been stealing, right?
The so linked together in
over
point of
$8
time and
million.
circumstances with the
That
crime
we know.
charge that one cannot be fully shown without proving the other, and thus is part of the res gestae of the crime charged. And where evidence is admissible to prove this full presentation of the offense, there is no reason to fragmentize the events under inquiry by suppressing parts of the res gestae. And interestingly, involved in that case, the court held that did not require a 403 analysis because the evidence was properly admitted as part of the res gestae. The issue of whether or not a 404B analysis was done was not necessary. And at this point, the court hasn't addressed any particular issue under 404B, but I find that it is admissible, provided that the proper scrutiny is done in relation to clear and convincing evidence and a logical relationship to the offense for which we're having this trial. And additionally, as relates to intent, evidence tending to prove a defendant's state of mind or intent at or near the time of the crime is relevant to establish possible guilt. So there are many areas under which it's appropriate for the court to consider admitting this evidence of other crimes, other bad acts, in a manner that does not address or seek to have the jury conclude that it's propensity evidence, and the court will address all of that as we proceed. Yes, sir, Mr. Griffin.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just want to get some arguments on the record for purposes. As to your Honor's conclusion that we opened the door by presenting evidence of good character, I would respectfully disagree. And the evidence that we presented was specifically limited to the relationship between the defendant and the victim for which he was accused of murdering. In our view, that is not character witness. That's a factual issue relating to the relationship between the parties. And so I just want to put that on the record. Your Honor puts great emphasis and reliance on U.S. v. Siegel, and that's a federal case. I just want to point out that. Yes, sir.
Federal second.
The federal site is 536 F3rd 306.
F3rd, yes.
Yes, sir. And it's important to distinguish the federal crimes for which the defendant in Siegel was charged with. First, the defendant, she was charged with murdering the victim to prevent him from reporting fraud, and that's a specific federal statute, 18 U.S.C. 1512 A1C. She's also charged with impending an official investigation.
Yeah, but that's kind of similar. And I will be honest, part of what I think in terms of Maggie and Paul is that we don't know for sure because they're dead. So if this was the plan, it worked, that there wasn't something like that, right? Like, what I mean, again, I still think there could be a whole lot of this that has to do with Lori Satterfield. But whether it's that or whether it's some of the other stuff, that also, I think, makes, because Buster's the only survivor, right? So, anywho.
Reporting the deceased body across state lines. But further, the indictment alleged a broader scheme and
that's not by accident, because remember, he lured Paul and Maggie there that day.
To the fraud. And in the indictment, it listed many of the prior crimes that the defendant committed in the federal indictment. And so And under federal rule 404B, you can prove those up. And then there were others that the court considered they were related to the whole scheme and artifice to defraud. The indictment in this case, Your Honor, is simply on June 7th, 2021, the defendant with malice aforethought murdered Ms. Maggie Murdaugh, murdered Mr. Paul Murdaugh, and used violent weapons in commission of those 2 crimes. There's no scheme and artifice to defraud.
You're currently addressing it as if the court ruled based on 404. And the court clearly stated that we have not reached any determination on 404, that the basis of the court's ruling was 403. The voting case, as you introduced through the witness, and opening the door by giving testimony, soliciting testimony of generally good character of the defendant, such that neither of the 2 witnesses could possibly imagine a scenario under which what would cause this crime to have occurred. And the state is entitled to.
I'll tell you guys right now, that cup that's next to Creighton, that looks like a nitro cold brew cup. Has anybody else had the nitro cold brew from Starbucks? It has a special kind of lid. I haven't had that in for fucking ever. I forgot how good that is. I used to drink that all the time. That's what that looks like to me. And that looks like a venti, and it's almost gone. And this is the morning.
Confront that evidence in the manner in which the court ruled. But you're arguing 404. I cited that for an additional basis to say the court will need to look at all of that as we proceed with evidence of prior bad acts. But the basis of the court's ruling was not 404, but 403, opening the door.
Are you saying you've never had it?
Responding to the evidence that you adduced.
Yes, sir. Hearing outside the presence of the jury on their proposed 404B evidence?
Yes, sir.
Okay, then I can save all the arguments then. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right.
And again, with regard to planning purposes for the jury.
Okay, so the jury.
You set up a witness, whatever.
Right, so they have that one Snapchat. We're going to go forward. They have the one snap. They're playing a replay there. The quick Snapchat custodian, right, for the chain of custody of the Snapchat records. She's there for 2 seconds. And now we have Jeanne Seckinger. So let's go. Wow, it's really good. Do you drink coffee? Do you drink cold brew at all? I know there's some of you guys who are like huge coffee people, but the nitro cold brew is so good. Oh my God.
State your name again for the record. Spell your last
Here
name.
we go. You're ready. Now, what I will say, so these witnesses, right, they testified twice each, right? Like they do, what the heck is what? I don't understand. They testify like in these proffers, and then they testify again in front of the jury. So what I am going to do is we're going to watch them in their proffers, because I feel like the proffers are more spicy, and also they kind of skip some of these stuff, like things like establishing foundation or whatever, because this is just to get to the heart of what they're going to testify to. So I remember thinking this at the time during the trial, and when I covered it too, that I think that the proffer testimony is like the better testimony of these witnesses. And also it's their first time testifying about it. Right. And because the jury's not present, they can get just a little bit more feisty, if you will. So, okay. So first up, we have Jeanne Seckinger.
My name is Jeanne Seckinger, Seckinger.
Yeah. And I'm not a fan of Starbucks either, but I will say that I used to live right near a Starbucks. This is a few years ago. And they were the first people to do the nitro cold brew. And that was why I would go, because I loved that nitro cold brew. And nowhere else had it. I think now other places may have it. But back then it was like just Starbucks. And like they had a really good rewards program where like, I don't know, I got free drinks a lot, I feel like. But anywho, I wouldn't support them by choice. I just went because I wanted the nitro. If that makes sense. Is that a coffee shop? 7 Brew? That's funny. Well, I'll tell you what, she's a badass bitch. She's nothing like Jennings, for sure. Nothing like it. I see what you're saying though. You know what it is? I think it's the leopard print and like the hairdo and like the outfit. I see what you're saying. The outfit gives those vibes, but the personality is way different.
I'm good.
Good. Let me fix this Elmo real quick.
Oh, we love you, Elmo.
You understand we're here right now outside the presence of the jury for an in-camera hearing to determine the admissibility of some of your testimony.
I do.
Here we go.
And
Admissibility.
just very quickly, if you would, give us a little bit. I'm not going to go through all the background. I wasn't in front of the jury unless Your Honor would like, but give us a little bit about your background and where you currently work, how that led to where you currently work.
Okay, I graduated with a BS in accounting from USC, went to work in an accounting firm for a few years, then switched to industrial at Westinghouse. And in 1999, I came to work at PMPED, which is Peters Murdaugh Parker, as a temporary bookkeeper, and that has grown over the years to the office manager, CFO, accountant, anything business and insurance and HR related.
Okay, and that's for whom?
For Peters Murdaugh Parker, Elstroth and Dietrich.
Is that PMPED?
Correct.
And that's the law firm that Alex Murdaugh used to work for?
Correct.
Is that have a different name now?
We are now a new entity that's called Parker Law Group LLP.
All right, so just very quickly, you've already kind of said this, but go through sort of the financial side of your job duties as it existed for PMPED back in the relevant time periods.
Okay, so my financial duties are, actually I have people under me that do the day-to-day processing of checks, but my duties are to balance and reconcile accounts, provide financial statements, help with all tax documents, preparation of taxes.
By the way, so the jury box. So if you look on the top right there, you can see the jury box. This is really funny, and you guys will notice because the jury's not there, right? So what you guys will notice is over the course of the day and throughout the rest of these like proffers, you'll notice that things stack up, especially Creighton, because Creighton loves to do the lounge lizard where he goes and lounges or sits on top of that, whatever you call it, shelfie thing. So right now you can see there's a cell phone, there's a couple bottles of water. Eventually you'll notice things, they start using it as like a staging area, as it were, right? For like their props. I mean, I'm calling it a prop, right? It's whatever. But I just freaking love that they're like, okay, no jury's here. And now we're just going to like use this thing and use it as furniture, use it as a table. So you guys can keep an eye out for the Creighton the lounge lizard. And as the shit piles up on the thing.
Also prepared anything for any government census or surveys that we needed and anything HR related.
I want to ask you a little bit about the financial structure of how PMPED works, if I could. And if you could explain that a little bit.
And there it is.
You know, people often
Didn't take long. There he is sitting on, I freaking love that so much.
think of lawyers as partners, but are they called partners under the employment agreement that everyone signed?
No, we're called partners when we refer to each other as they're in the business, but for tax purposes, everybody was an owner, it was a C corporation, so everybody's shareholders. And within Peters Murdaugh Parker, every employee was a salaried employee, including the partners.
Okay. And did the employment agreement that everyone signed require that any fees or money generated by any partner or lawyer by the firm had to go to the firm?
It did.
And explain to me how, if you're let's just call them quote partner, if you're a partner, how does the compensation work? What are the elements of compensation as it worked under the PMPED structure back in 2021 prior?
So every partner received a base salary that they would receive in biweekly payments throughout the year. That was set at a level of about $125,000. The majority of their pay came through an end of the year bonus, which is when we closed out the books and settled on the books. And primarily after overhead and over expenses were met, the net profit was divided amongst those partners. And in a simplified form, it was basically distributed based on a ratio of the fees that they brought in percentage to the total.
But that distribution would not take place until when?
Usually the last week of December.
Yes, sir.
Waters, there's a strike. Can you repeat the previous question for me?
Yes, sir. Going back to Seckinger, we were talking a little bit about the compensation structure for PMPED as it existed in 2021. And if you could, again, explain to the court how that worked. How are partners, and we're going to call them loosely that term, how are they compensated?
Okay, partners are employed salaries who are paid a biweekly paycheck throughout the year with a base salary of $125,000. And at the end of the year, they received a bonus check, usually in the last week of the year, that divided up the remaining profits of the firm based upon the percentage of revenue each attorney brought into the total.
Right. So when fees came in, they're going to be attributed to a particular lawyer, and ultimately that's going to be a percentage of the total revenues, and that's going to determine their percentage of the compensation at the end of the year after all overhead is paid.
Correct.
Is there also some sort of 7.5% fund or fee or something like that, or amount that's put aside?
There is. You would take the gross bonuses that are the gross fees everybody brought in, less than overhead, and once we get to that number, everybody would throw in a pot 7.5%, and that money was divided back equally among the employees. And then a new percentage was arrived at to determine how much everybody would receive of the net income.
Right. So you have to take care of overhead, right?
Yes.
And what is an overhead, just generally?
Overhead is just basically the expenses to run the business, what it costs us to advance client costs, what it costs to pay our employees, what it costs to rent the building, to provide equipment, office supplies, postage, et cetera.
And that's got to be accounted for, and you got to account for the 7.5% as well, correct?
That's right.
Right. And then only after that does each partner get compensation based on their relative contribution during that year.
Correct.
Is typically the vast majority of compensation received by a partner at PMPED received in that distribution at the end of the year?
Yes.
And when does that take place?
The last week of the year, generally speaking.
Okay. And what is the point of that goal? Why do you want to sort of clear out all the money and clear the books?
So basically, that we don't want to leave the money in there to be taxed by the corporation because it's a C Corp entity. So the objective is to get it out to the partners and avoid double taxation.
And so because of that, is it up to each individual partner to essentially
taxes are due soon, guys? Have y'all started that?
manage the bulk of their compensation that's received in one lump sum during the course of the next year?
Yes, they need a budget.
All right, let me show you what's been marked for purposes of this hearing as States 310 and see if you recognize that document.
Yes, this is the employment agreement each shareholder/partner would have signed.
Okay. And I just want to direct your attention to number 2, and if you could tell the court what that provision that's signed by all the partners says.
It says the employee accepts such employment and agrees that the employee will devote the employee's entire time and endeavor to the employer's business.
And then number 3, if you could read that to the court, please.
Services for the benefit of the employer. All professional services rendered by the employer shall be rendered as an employee of the employer, and all proceeds and remuneration received therefore shall inure to the employer's benefit.
Okay. Well, tell me what that means.
That means that all fees earned should come through payable to PMPD.
All right. And so if a lawyer earns fees, is it appropriate at all for those fees to go directly to the lawyer as opposed to going through the law firm?
No,
Is that a hard rule to understand?
no,
Anybody ever have a problem with that rule or not understand it?
no.
Pretty easy and hard and fast rule in that firm.
That's
correct?
right.
If you get the money written straight to you, what is that?
The money's taken straight to you?
Yeah.
That would be stealing it.
Stealing. Please, could y'all turn the screen to me?
Like you're hosting the pilot, right?
Is
No.
that better?
So I
Could you see that in a second? All
Yes.
right. So 2 and 3.
And Alex, since I was in high school, so roughly 40 years,
And how long have you worked with him, or did you work with him?
about 23, 24 years since 1999.
And did he have lucrative practice in your observation?
Yes, he did well.
Was he sometimes getting as much as 7 figures in the end of the year?
He has.
Are you familiar with what's been called the boat case?
Yes.
And tell me what your understanding of the boat case is, just generally. What was that?
Generally speaking, it was an accident that several children got in one evening where it was in Paul's or the Murdaugh's boat. Paul was accused as the driver, and there were a lot of civil suits and some criminal proceedings going on related to that crime.
And following the boat case, is it your understanding that Paul Murdaugh was charged?
Yes.
Is it your understanding that Alex Murdaugh was civilly sued?
Yes,
And there was ongoing civil litigation at the time Paul and Maggie were murdered?
that's correct.
After the boat case happened, did you and Alex ever have any discussions about structuring fees?
We did in late May of 2021. Right about the end of the month, we had some discussions about Hirschberger. A disbursement came through that he had tried to send his fees to a structured settlement.
June 7th was the
And
murder.
the conversation was that he had done it improperly, because to structure fees properly, it has to be part of the release. It has to go straight from the insurance company, straight to the insurance structured annuity place. And we would need to be told about it in our firm so we could account for it in our 7.5%. But in this particular case, Alec had sent the money directly to Forge. We discussed the fact that it would not be any tax benefit to him. And at that point in time, he said he was not really worried about the tax benefit of it. And he said he was trying to put some money in Maggie's name due to the boat wreck, and that he was trying to figure out if he was going to structure fees for the future.
Yeah. Did he say he was trying to do a favor for anyone too?
He did say he was friends with Michael Gunn, and who is the owner of, or one of the operators of Forge, and that he was going to try to put up to about $250,000 into a structure as a favor for Michael Gunn.
All right, when you say Forge, what are you talking about?
So Forge is a company that does structured annuities.
You got the full name real quick?
It's Forge Consulting.
Let's call it Forge Consulting.
Okay, Forge
Try to do that.
Consulting.
All right, tell
Yeah.
me about Forge Consulting.
They're a company that will do structured annuities for clients. They'll do structured fees for attorneys. They do some wealth management. They do minor pool trust. They have several different things that they do. I think they've branched out into insurance coverage now. They provide a lot of financial tools.
When you say that you had a conversation with him about him supposedly structuring fees, how did this come to your attention?
It came to my attention over the fact that a disbursement, one of my secretaries or my assistant brought to me, that had been brought to her attention by Alex's secretary or paralegal Annette Griswold, and came and asked me if this was proper, and then came to me after the fact, and that's when I went and had conversations with Alec about this.
Okay. And so had the money already been paid?
Yes,
And you went to Alec and you asked, what's this about?
yes.
And he said, I'm doing what?
I'm just trying to defer and put money into Maggie's name, structure some fees.
Did he tell you where that money had gone? What was your belief where that money had gone after you talked to Alec?
My belief was it had gone to Ford Consulting.
The real entity, Forge
Yes.
Consulting.
Yes.
All right. I'm going to show you just real quick what's been marked for purposes of this hearing in States 311 and see if you recognize that's it. I think there's 4 documents in there.
Yes, these are the Hirschberger settlement documents, which is the case that we're talking about, the fee that he sent as a structure.
Okay. And are there 1 or 2 in there ultimately?
There are ultimately 2. There's one that's structured to look like fee, and then the other one was structured to look like it was client's money that was being sent on the client's behalf.
Which one were you aware of at the time?
I was aware of the fee one for the $83,333.33.
All right. At the time, did you think that any money had been misappropriated or stolen, or did you just think Alec was trying to sort of diverted some money because of the boat case, but not necessarily anything misappropriated at that
Right.
time.
We were not thinking about him misappropriating funds or stealing any client funds. What we were concerned about was he was trying to either defer income by leaving it in somebody's trust or either trying to put some money into Maggie's name to avoid things for the boat accident.
When you say we were concerned, who's concerned?
Myself and some of the partners.
Why are y'all concerned about him potentially trying to put money in a structure or in Maggie's name because of the boat case?
Well, because that would be wrong and we did not want any part of that.
Right. Let me put this up on the screen real quick.
So I think this is where they go into this for freaking ever. Let me see here.
All right. Do you recognize this document right here?
Excuse me. Yes, that's the document that is in question with $83,333.33 fee.
Just jump ahead a bit.
She just shows at the conclusion of the case, once the recovery, it will show the recovery amount, $500,
Goes
Right,
on
and then
for a
the
long
firm gets paid
time.
its fees out of that.
$1,000 that should not have been taken from the client.
So just a slight hand of paperwork. Disbursement, correct?
You missed the one for $65,000. There was two in that one.
Okay, take a break. Stretch break.
To this proceeding, and so you can recognize that.
I do. This is a spreadsheet of the
And
payments that
more.
were made to Palmetto State Bank.
Spreadsheet says July 2005. I'm going to point you to this disbursement, though. What's
Now
the date
they're
on that
having a
disbursement?
break. Sorry,
November.
now they're having a break. So again, they just go on for those documents for a long time. Let's see here.
After Maggie and Paul's murder, and after Mr. Randolph's death, murder on the 7th, Mr. Randolph Murdaugh's death on the 10th, how long of a delay was there before you got in touch with Lee Cope and Lee reached out to Chris Wilson?
There wasn't a delay in me getting in touch with Lee Cope. Lee Cope knew about it. The decision was made to call me off of it. Now Lee would deal with it from there with Chris Wilson.
Okay, so as far as you know, there was no delay. It was
Okay, so
just
we're gonna
taken
skip
over
the
by
thread.
Lee Cope.
There wasn't a delay on my part. It was taken over by Lee Cope.
And you don't know whether Lee,
Operating expenses and total fees start to come in. He got paid back. People would move on, correct?
That's right.
Crime, and that is the
Okay, this is what I want to
confrontation.
get to, the argument.
Actually,
all the time to establish.
and so this other judgment related outside discussion with Alex.
Okay, here we go. Perfect. Perfect.
Well, we're running up on lunchtime. Mr. Waters, what's next?
Well, we can certainly continue with this. We have Annette Griswold, who is Alex's former paralegal, who in large measure will testify to the similar events with Thomas Moore, Hirschberger, and the Ferris fees. Again, I don't want to be cumulative for purposes of this, but she will certainly add to that. We also have available on this particular issue Michael Gunn, who is the principal in Forge, who of course will testify that he had never had any discussion with Alec about structuring fees, or at least nothing had ever been set up, and that this account is not his, and that all the money in these various transactions never went to him, and that they were diverted. And then we have Chris Wilson as well, who can describe the circumstances of those Ferris fees. All that would be very lengthy, but we have all that available in as much as that's necessary to complete the story for purposes of the in-camera hearing. We do have, though, we have arranged to get additional SLED and other witnesses here related outside of this for the afternoon, if you wish to make use of the jury for that. And also, as it relates to this, and we're also prepared to offer testimony about these particular instances, but we do have a confession of judgment that I would offer to the court at this point in time in the Satterfield case. And again, and before the jury, we would have testimony about that, but for purposes of clear convincing evidence, we have this confession of judgment that we would offer for purposes of this hearing as well. In addition, we have his disbarment from the Supreme Court, which also refers to his admissions of financial misconduct, which we believe also are relevant to the court's decision at this point as to whether or not there is clear and convincing evidence established of these various other crimes. And so we would offer those as well to the court for its consideration now. However, we can certainly offer testimony about those aspects as well. I think, Your Honor, if we can get to a decision point on the law firm witnesses, then we can move forward. And again, we have some witnesses related to Satterfield that we could address and try to work that in over the next few days of court time. And then finally, with the boat case as well. And so that would be some of the financial witnesses that we would offer. And then finally, Your Honor, we do have some witnesses from Palmetto State Bank who will talk about the extent of Alex Murdaugh's financial condition at the time the murders happened, and the reason why, explaining the reason why all these things were occurring and why they were all coming to a head in June of 2021.
Mr. Griffin?
Your Honor, I think there's more than enough in the record from this witness to establish that this evidence is not admissible under 404B. And I mean, without even getting to whether they can prove it up by clear and convincing evidence. I'm happy to make that argument at any point in time. But if the whole landscape that he just talked about, Your Honor, 403 also includes a component of undue delay. And as he just described, all the financial misdeeds or crimes that he wants to prove up, we're going to be here until end of February, I suspect, or March, because that's adding 2 weeks to this trial.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. And obviously, as I even pointed out with this witness, we're trying to streamline the presentation. Frankly, the extent of misappropriation is very, very broad, and we're trying to focus on just a few areas. And the ones that we're focusing on are the ones that really came out of his mouth within seconds of law enforcement being on the scene, within seconds of the 911 call happening. And that is, of course, the boat case. And what does that mean? That there's two things that are very temporally connected with this particular crime. And that is the confrontation with Ms. Seckinger that morning over the fares fees that have been percolating for a while. And then number two is that pending hearing that very week in the boat case, which again, the purpose of that hearing is to, in a specific request for production and interrogatory, to identify all accounts. And again, once you do that, once those accounts are identified, just like Mr. Seckinger was able to do, just like law enforcement was able to do, the state grand jury was able to do, it doesn't take long to figure all that out and then lead to not only what's happened here, his disbarment, but also, I don't have to get into this specifically, but 99 counts for which he's facing possible sentence of life without parole on that alone. And so that kind of consequence that's hanging out there is very much relevant and very timely to what was going on June the 7th in his life. The defense asked the question, can you think of any reason? And all of this going on in his life, which is a stellar series of events like nothing ever seen, is certainly relevant for the jury to consider when they consider a perfect storm that was arriving for this man on June the 7th.
Griffin, the witnesses that are here, Ms. Griswold, Chris Wilson, and Mr. Gunn, confession of judgment and the disbarment. Do you contest the matters which they are here to testify concerning?
It depends on how far they go with their testimony, but I certainly, as predicate for Mr. Gunn to testify, they didn't have an account at Bank of America, and those checks were not deposited with us. I didn't know anything about this. I mean, that we're acceptable to that, and just, without knowing full scope of what they intend to offer, it's hard to say yes, but that's all. I mean, just like this witness, she has a lot of information that is, that she learned through investigation. But if we had to try this case, 90% of it she couldn't testify to.
I point out that those witnesses that I mentioned, as well as every single one of those victims, all testified. There is transcripts on that, which the defense has had, which Your Honor has access to as well. So I don't know that necessarily it needs to all be repeated for Your Honor's determination now, because again, as he just said, those facts have been testified to. It's just a question of the parameters for this particular trial, which again, the state's intent is not to try 100 white collar cases in the context of this murder case. It's only to explain to the jury enough of what was going on in an unfathomable set of events for a lawyer, what was going on in his life that were all coming to a head on June 7th. I think that's extremely relevant, and we plan to do so in a very expedited and focused fashion.
Your Honor, I would say for purposes of the trial, going forward with the jury, I mean, we're not stipulating to any facts.
Yes, sir. Well,
But for purposes of hearing, I'm very candid with the court.
yes, sir. As far as the court's view of things and what the court needs to determine to be convinced that clear and convincing evidence exists, clear and convincing evidence is not proof beyond a reasonable doubt and all that. And it says that degree of proof which will give me a firm belief as to the facts sought to be proven. And if those specific facts are not being contested, what the communications with Ms. Griswold, that's in the record, with Chris Wilson, there may be, Attorney Wilson, may be some dispute, I don't know. Mr. Gunn, Forge is a well-known consulting firm, and the Bank of America account says Richard A. Murdaugh, sole proprietor, DBA Forge. Confession of judgment, disbarment. I'm happy to sit and hear any and all of the testimony. One of the things that did occur in the Siegel case was the judge who got reversed didn't want to spend time listening and hearing all of the evidence because of the expediency of things. And the court says, although we sympathize with the court's concern about the length and complexity of the trial, we nevertheless conclude that the importance of the evidence, due to the importance of the evidence, it must be presented and the court must receive it. So I am happy to do that without needless presentation of evidence twice, more than once. Now,
For real.
I understand the defense's position, and I'm not seeking any waiver on the question of whether or not this should be admitted or not admitted. I know you each have your arguments on regarding 404 issues, and I haven't heard much argument on the race geste issue, which is equally important, or perhaps more important.
All solved his own murder with help of
But if you
and the
are interested in contesting the nature of each one of these witnesses' testimony, if they're here in November, we can hear them. I mean, we can. You indicate that there are some other witnesses on other matters that can occupy the jury for a bit of time this afternoon.
Yes, sir. After our discussion this morning, we got some folks rolling, and after lunch hour, I think we can take us to the end of the day with witnesses that don't relate to this specific issue.
We can go in that direction and then resume with more witnesses later this afternoon, tomorrow morning, tomorrow afternoon. I just don't want the jury to sit and to be in an idle format. And to the extent that you all can be in agreement with a path forward, that's best. If you can't, then I make the call.
Your Honor, as I mentioned earlier, I strongly believe that based on what you've heard thus far, it doesn't meet the elements of 4 and 4B, and you don't need to get to whether it's been proven up by clear and convincing. I mean, if you rule against us on that, then we have to.
How about race geste?
Well, the only thing that would come close to res gesti is tomato.
Oh, wow,
So the only thing that comes close to that is, the encounter on June the 7th by this witness up there about the Ferris matter. So one matter, it's the Chris Wilson co-counsel fee issue, and that was the only thing he was confronted about in the afternoon before the murders. And
the state has to prove the state of mind of the defendant. Not solely what this witness knew at that moment in time, but what the defendant knew. That is subject to exposure.
And so, Your Honor, with regard to the res gesti issue, we had briefed State v. King 334 SC 504, and that is somewhat similar in that it involved thefts where someone stealing money and there were remote thefts, and there was a theft the night before or close in time to the murders. And the claim was that the murders were done to get money from the victim, and that we had thefts earlier in the day or the day previous, and then a number of thefts months and years before.
Did the judge do the 403 analysis, 403, 404 analysis in King?
Well, the trial judge allowed it in. The Supreme Court, Justice Burnett in 1999, overturned Judge Hicks Harwell for admitting the evidence.
How? Conducting the 404 analysis, 403 analysis?
Well, I mean, they have a footnote in there.
You have to do what we're doing now.
Yes, sir. But in the case, they said, while the remote thefts may have been minimally relevant, show motive underlie the prejudicial effect of this evidence far outweighed the slight probative value. So the Supreme Court did a 403 analysis, and that's in footnote 5, Your Honor.
Anything else before we break? We'll resume at, we'll resume at 2 o'clock at 2:15 with witnesses, and we will resume with witnesses and jury witnesses, and we'll resume with this in-camera hearing involving witnesses later.
Yes, sir.
So be in recess at 2:15.
All right, there you have it, guys. So we will pick up here next time. Okay, and we're getting into the what's his face, the 14th solicitor, 14th Circuit solicitor's office or whatever. There's Anjanette Levy, speaking of her. And then we have, Forge. Yep. Oh, and then we have Chris Wilson. That is one of the most important parts of this trial for me anyway, that Chris Wilson testimony isn't. So that will be a big one to look forward to for next time on this, is hearing Chris Wilson's testimony. That testimony is, oh my God, so heart-wrenching. And so Rochelle, excited she made it through. Congratulations. Yep. Just perfect timing here. Wonderful. Glad you made it through. And you're very welcome, Meg. You're very, very welcome. So we will be back. We'll follow up with the rest of the Karen Read. Maybe we'll see more coming out of Idaho potentially. Plenty of cases going on that we are covering. I also have the most recent Delphi document. And as you guys are aware, also, I'm working on another version of that video with the enhanced audio, courtesy of DB. But that'll be it for this one, guys. 5 streams in one day. So that's my record. So Don't know if we'll ever beat that, but not that it matters anyway. This was a lot of fun. We covered a lot of different cases in one day. And yeah, y'all are awesome. Squirrel Crew's the best. Love you guys. And I appreciate you guys hanging out with me, and I'll see y'all next time.